You're listening to the Common Descent Podcast.
Hello, Will.
Hello, David.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Common Descent, where we talk about paleontology and the history of life on Earth. This is episode 248. Our topic for this episode is big cats.
Yeah, big kitty cats.
Now, we did a cats episode 93.
Mm-hmm.
We also talked a whole lot about saber-toothed cats in episode 214. This episode, we are looking specifically at big cats and also large cats. We'll get into it in the episode. But in the modern day, there are a bunch of large felids that we will get to discuss in detail in this episode. We'll go through the diversity of our modern day big capital B and big lowercase b cats. We'll talk some about their lifestyles, their evolution, what makes them special. Mostly we're just going to gush and geek out about big cats because they're so darn cool.
Yeah, they are just very awesome animals. Like, there's not a dud in the bunch.
There really isn't. Unsurprisingly, this is a much requested topic. This episode was requested by the following listeners: Eleanor, Jen, Josiah, Big Boss Man, Ryan, Bear, Kristen, and The One.
Thank you, everyone.
And besides big cats being a whole lot of fun to talk about, and besides all of those listeners of ours who requested that we talk about it, we happen to know somebody with lots of knowledge and experience with big cats. So, after the news, when we get to the main episode discussion, we will be joined by this episode's special guest, all the way from YouTube, Lindsay Nikole, who will join us for this gushing geek out session about some of the coolest cats around.
It's very cool to have Lindsay on. I'm so excited.
Agreed. Well, let's waste no more time getting through our announcements. First and foremost, as always, this podcast is supported almost entirely by our patrons over on Patreon. We are eternally grateful to all those folks over there who lend us not just the moral support, but the financial support to allow us to do all of the things we have to do here for the podcast. In exchange for their support, patrons get access to all sorts of goodies: bonus news, live streams, special merch. At certain levels, when you join on Patreon, you get your name shouted out here on the podcast. This episode, we would like to welcome new patrons Joel, Matt, Kay, and Mo.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for supporting us.
Thank you so much. Dear listeners, if you're not already a patron, we encourage you to consider it if you're able to support us here at the podcast and our science education projects and goals and such. Right now is an excellent time to join us on the Patreon because it is July. It is Snake Month. All month long, we are celebrating snakes with snake-themed content. Last episode, we talked all about vipers. We've got a bonus episode coming up. Actually, by the time that you're hearing this, it's already out. Check out our bonus episode where we talk to our friend Ali about snake research. And over on the Patreon this month only, you can join the special Snakes and Crocs tier, where you will be contributing not only to our science education efforts, but also to donations we will be making at the end of the summer to reptile and wildlife conservation. This year, we are donating to Save the Snakes, the Crocodile Research Coalition, and the Natural Resources Defense Council.
Yes.
During this month, you can also join us over on Discord to participate in the Snake Stuff channel to get all of your fun snake thoughts out. And if you missed it, you can check out our Snake Month live stream archived on YouTube. And if you want, you can go back to last month and check out all the Croc Month stuff. We've been having a whole lot of fun. Elsewhere, our spin-off podcast, Leave It to Us, is going strong. Several episodes, I think 6 episodes, which is half of the season 2, will have been released by the time this episode is out. So go check that out for all your planty needs. And it's getting toward the end of July, so just a real quick reminder that Will and I will be going to DragonCon this year at the beginning of September in Atlanta. More details to come.
Yes, we got like preliminary schedules and plans happening, and I'm so excited.
And one last thing, it feels appropriate here on the podcast to acknowledge the recent passing of Sam Neill, a
Yeah.
very prolific and beloved actor who happens to have been immensely important in the background of this podcast as the actor who portrayed Dr. Alan Grant in Jurassic Park, which is a performance that it is safe to say, if not that our podcast wouldn't exist without that performance, but for sure that the podcast would be a different shape without Sam Neill's performance as Dr. Alan Grant.
Yeah, silver screen science may or may not have happened because that all started because of Jurassic Park.
Yes, absolutely. So we want to take this moment to just express our appreciation, our love, our gratitude to the now late, great Sam Neill. And we will be making a donation on behalf of the podcast, separate from our Croc and Snake Month donations later in the summer, to St. Vincent's Curran Foundation, which is a medical foundation that supports medical research, medical education, which was a place, which is a foundation that Sam Neill also supported through charity and advocacy. And I believe one of this foundation's hospitals is where Sam Neill received care during this last illness of his.
Yeah. So that'll be very nice to get to support.
Yes. So we encourage all of you, if you can donate somewhere, go for it. If you can watch your favorite Sam Neill performance on film or TV. He was also in some video games. He was in some like Jurassic Park video games and stuff.
Yep.
So we encourage you to celebrate Sam Neill at this time, in addition to snakes. This is Snakes and Sam Neill month this year. With all that said, let us move on to the news. Every episode, we like to cover some news from scientific fields that interest us. Will, what news did you bring today?
My first bit of news is about Megalodon, the giant ancient shark, and new research on a re-identified vertebra from it that is giving us info about its size. I mostly picked it because I'm always curious to see what drama's happening with Megalodon. I love following. This is my paleo tabloids.
What's the tea? What's the latest tea in the world of Megalodon?
This is research by Kinshu Shimada et al. In Paleontologica Electronica, and the article is by David Hone in The Conversation. So, Megalodon, or Otudus megalodon, which is its current name, is a ancient, what's called megatooth shark, one of these giant sharks with large serrated teeth, much like today's great whites. Lived during the Miocene, 15 to 3.5 million years ago, and is the largest shark we know of by quite a wide margin, but exactly how large it was has been debated, re-estimated, adjusted, reanalyzed, reevaluated, because as is the case with sharks, they have a cartilaginous skeleton, so we do not get nice, complete specimens like you might get with other animals. We mostly get teeth. We do have some calcified and mineralized jaw and backbone material, but those last two are much more rare. It's mostly teeth, and while teeth are extremely identifiable for sharks because they are very characteristic for a species very often, they are not necessarily good at telling you what the rest of the shark looked like. So the sizes of Megalodon have ranged. One size estimate that was very well known and popular just because it is extremely impressive was an estimate of 24.3 meters in total length,
which is like 60 feet.
60 feet long.
That's a preposterous size.
Yeah. This was based off of some vertebrae that were preserved that were found in upper Miocene deposits in Denmark from the Graham Formation, roughly 11 million years old. The estimates were mostly based off of, or partly based off of, photographs of these vertebrae. The vertebrae themselves were not available because they were thought to have been lost decades ago.
Right.
So during a transition from one museum to another, the Geological Museum in Copenhagen to the Museum of Southern Jutland, they lost track of the vertebrae, and it was thought that they had been lost in transit during that transition in 1989.
We've all moved.
Yep.
It
Yep,
happens.
it happens.
Right? You
And the
misplace a
article,
thing.
I really respect them in the conversation article of making an effort to say, like, these things happen. That doesn't mean museums are bad for fossils, but humans are running them and humans make mistakes. These things
Yes.
are going to happen. There's thousands and millions and of fossils across hundreds of museums. It's going to happen sometimes.
Yes. Also, keep good documentation
Yep.
as
It
best you
just
can.
is another reminder to try to do better next time.
Yep. Back up your fossils.
Based off of what we did have, descriptions and photos of these vertebrae, some of them were described to have a diameter, so, across the circle of the vertebrae of 23 centimeters, so almost a foot.
That's a big
Like getting,
vertebra.
yeah, more than 2/3 of a foot across. Largest known vertebrae of any megalodon specimen. And so these are where that extremely large body size came from. Now, there have been other size estimates. I don't have them all written down, but you can look up others. And they've also adjusted as we've adjusted what shape we think megalodon was, how long it was, how robust it was. But the bottom line is that vertebrae are going to give us our best estimate for the size of the animal. And if we can find vertebrae similar to this or these vertebrae, that would be our best bet. This study is because we found some of these vertebrae.
Hooray!
They were not fully lost.
I bet they were between the couch cushions.
Right? Yep. They're popping up a table.
It was a coaster. I've been using it as a coaster for 20 years.
A couple of them were found, apparently, as they said, sat on a shelf unrecognized. Just no one had realized what they were.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't like behind anything. It's just that they did not end up where they were supposed to. And so the people who were looking for them weren't looking for where they were. And where they were, people didn't recognize them.
And presumably, because this is another thing that you have to be really careful of when you're moving museum specimens, it sounds like the fossils became separated from whatever documentation.
Yes. Yep.
Would have ideally been with them. Yeah,
yep.
Because this is a thing that can be easy to underestimate. But if a fossil, if that bone doesn't have the proper tag with it,
yep,
almost no one is going to be able to tell you which bone that is.
Yes. It's an easy thing to not think about, because so often we can just say, yeah, this bone is this bone is this, because we have those things. But if you take that tag away, most paleontologists don't know most fossils.
Yes. Not until a shark expert walks over to that shelf and goes, hey, wait a minute. Mm-hmm.
Like, I might be able to recognize it's, fish, that it is some kind of fish. Yeah. That it's definitely not mammalian or reptilian, but I won't be able to say that's megalodon, because I don't know shark vertebrae.
If I had walked past that, I would have been like, wow, that's a big, weird vertebra, and then continued walking. Because I would have no reason to think that it was something.
Yeah.
Because if it was something special, obviously somebody else would have noticed and done something about it. But I don't know, so I keep walking, and then it sits on a shelf for X number of decades.
Yep. It's as we like to harp on. It's why it's so important to just recheck what's in the collections every now and then and get some fresh eyes on it, because sometimes people go, whoop, hey, I know you had more to show me, but we need to talk about this.
Tour's over.
So now they were able to confirm some of those previous descriptions and photographic measurements.
Cool.
And 23 centimeters across and fits an estimate of 24 meters long.
Whew.
This is not one of those cases of, and now that we found it, let's get reasonable. Nope. It seems like that might be an accurate size.
That's awesome.
Now, there are some other notes. These vertebrae were also found in where they were dug up with or near remains of a citrahinid shark, a basking shark. The morphology and size of the vertebrae suggested these are still megalodon, that they are not basking shark, which could mean that the basking shark remains could be stomach contents of this shark, because that would be the kind of stuff that a shark like this could be hunting. Yep.
The idea, this is a very cartoony version of this, but the idea of digging in the dirt and going, wow, we found the bones of a giant ancient creature. And then you keep digging and it is inside of a larger
Yeah.
creature.
Yep. Yep. It's the movie openings that they like to do of a big scary animal coming and then getting eaten by the bigger,
Yes.
scarier animal that you actually need to worry about.
There's always a bigger fish, so I've heard.
Another thing that they were able to infer from this was some potential growth patterns
Oh.
based off of the features of the vertebrae, because we can get some information about age in vertebrae from animals like this, because they do have, growth rings, more or less. They have patterns of growth that show in the, in this case, not bone, but in the structure of that element. Based off this, they estimated that a newborn megalodon could be somewhere around like 3.5 meters, 3.6.
All right.
So
So
getting
just
an idea of,
a cute little 13-foot long bouncing
yeah,
baby shark.
exactly. Which to me also suggests heavily that probably live birth, because that would be a very big
Yeah.
egg.
Hmm. Which is what, like, great whites today are live
Exactly.
bears.
Yes, many sharks are, and many of the bigger sharks are. So that makes sense. Based off of, if that size and growth pattern is correct, it means that these animals may have been living almost a century, almost 100 years to get up to these sizes.
I believe it.
They also suggest that this specific individual had the potential to grow slightly larger than 24.3 meters, that like it may
Mhm.
not have been done growing. But they also note that the growth models should be taken very lightly. These are not based off of a growth series of specimens
Right.
of this size, but this new data and being able to confirm this does give us some potential things to look for, that it suggests these might be possible.
Yes. This is very incomplete data so far.
Yes, exactly. But it does represent our current largest known shark vertebrae and the largest non tetrapod vertebrae ever recorded.
Ooh.
Yep,
Yeah, because it's not a whale or a sauropod.
exactly. So this is the biggest vertebrae that's not one of those. But ultimately, we still would need a more complete specimen of megalodon to really be able to nail down all of these
Yeah.
inferences.
I think that you could probably stitch together all of the megalodon news we've covered on the podcast into a full-length episode.
Yeah, probably.
That's pretty big.
It's like when we talked about T-Rex in the Tyrannosaurus episode. I know that Megalodon gets overhyped, but I love it. I'm so fascinated. It was such
Yeah.
a topic of conversation for so long of my life that I want to know the most up-to-date info about this animal.
Yeah. Also, important information for Will to know specifically. It did take me a second, but I did remember what "There's always a bigger fish" is from.
Hey, as long as you the quotes in your heart, that's what matters.
And I want you to know that I do know what I did. Anyway, my first bit of news is also a fresh look at an ancient sea creature, but going way farther back in time than Megalodon, all the way to the Ediacaran biota,
Ooh.
just before the Cambrian. This is research by Scott Evans et al., published in the journal Scientific Reports, and we will link in the blog post to a press release in Sci News. The Ediacaran biota we have talked about extensively on the podcast, episode 31, and many times since. This is the Ediacaran period, is the last 100 million years or so of the Precambrian times, before life truly as we know it really took off. The Ediacaran fossils include the earliest large organisms and the earliest things that are suspected to have been animals.
Mhm.
But given the way that they're preserved, the fact that they're almost entirely soft tissues, and the fact that they are all extremely bizarre and difficult to identify, there are lots of open questions about their lifestyle, their behavior, and one topic that comes up quite a bit, their locomotion.
Yeah.
How were these various critters getting around, if they were getting around at all? Because there are tons of animals still today that just stay in one place.
Yes, and a lot of these do not look like they were mobile, like when you just
Yes.
glance at them.
There are several species from the Ediacaran that have been suggested to have been mobile, able to crawl or swim or move around somehow. This study examined signs of movement in a particular ediacaran species named Sprigina floundersi. Sprigina is it's a pretty famous ediacaran creature. It's not one of the top ones, I think, but this is a long ovoid, it has been described as, creature. So it kind of trilobite shaped, but
Yep.
like stretched out, or like an isopod or something, but without like the limbs or eyes. It's just kind of a blob, like a lot of ediacaran
Yeah.
things are.
A little sea cucumbery, but not quite.
Yeah, possibly with body segments like we see in worms and arthropods. Sprigina is preserved mainly as molds in sediment. So sediment hardened around the body, and then the body is gone, but the mold, that shape in the sediment, remains. In particular, in this case, they are looking at, it sounds like sediments that settled on top of it and then flipped over later
Okay,
on.
cool.
So you have these like upside down molds.
Yeah.
The shape of Sprigina shows that it appears to have been a bilateral organism, which means it had a left and a right, a front and a back, and a top and a bottom, which is not true of all animals. But we don't know much about how it lived its life or how it got around. The researchers here examined more than 100 specimens from Nilpena Ediacaran National Park and the South Australian Museum, and documented signs of movement in the body. They identified a handful of different things. One, a bunch of the specimens, the body was bent as though
yeah.
turning, like we might expect in a moving animal. Some of the specimens showed evidence of independent adjustments of different body parts.
Yeah.
So in the way, which maybe it did have segments of its body that it was able to move separately from the others, like we would imagine a thing with a tail and a head or whatever. And the sides of the body, along the sides of the body in some specimens, they noticed varying amounts of curvature, kind of like what you think of as in a sea slug.
Yeah.
Those sort of like waves down the side of the body that let them move.
Yeah, that peristalsis style movement that they do.
All of these signs suggest active movement of these creatures, possibly independent body segments, likely a benthic lifestyle, so crawling around on the sea floor, which exciting evidence for movement in an ediacaran critter. But also, they found specifically in the specimens that are bent a significant preference for bending to the right.
Interesting.
They do note that because these molds are inverse upside down molds, the fossils bend to the left, but the animal would have been bending to the right.
Yes, exactly.
They noted that in bending individuals, bends to the right were about twice as common as bends to the left. And while this could be related to some part of their anatomy that preempted them to orient that way, or something about the environment, they didn't notice anything that would suggest that this was some sort of like had to do with how they were buried or anything like that. So outside of those options, this appears to have been likely a behavioral thing. That these animals, question mark, had a preference for turning in one direction. If so, this would be the oldest known evidence of what is called behavioral handedness.
Yes.
Right? We think of ourselves as often as being left or right handed. This is extremely common among animals. There are tons of other animals, even if they don't have hands, who favor one side or the other. And it might be they turn that way. It might be that that's the leg they start walking with more often than the other one, but a preference for one side over the other. Exactly why this exists in animals, there's a lot of different potential explanations, and it's probably different for a lot of them. So the authors do note they cannot speculate why this would be happening in these creatures, but handedness has been suggested to be related to complex behavior patterns and complex nervous systems, that it's sort of an emergent property of that. So, not only is this potentially the oldest known evidence of handedness, possibly in something that is either one of the earliest animals or not an animal,
Mhm.
but also might be an indication that these ediacaran critters were more complex behaviorally and neurologically than we might expect.
That's so cool. And it's such a cool example to remind us of like what behavior and handedness and things like that, how, what forms it can take. Because,
Hmm.
like you said, it happens in things without hands. But I think it's easy to think of like, well, yeah, but you've got a hoof, you've got a foot, you've got a,
Hmm.
something comparable. But it's like, it could just be that, yeah, when I turn around, I, I'm not an ambi turner. I
Yes.
always turn to the right.
Turn to the right. Well, it can also be like, what side do you eat on? Like,
Yes. Yep.
I know that I tend to chew on one side of my mouth more than
Yep.
the other.
Yep. Yep.
And these animals might not have been chewing, but they might have preferential. Well, if you think about like a dog chewing on a,
Mhm.
grabbing a toy, they'll grab it on one side.
Yes.
And so it could be a turning thing, it could be how you interact with the environment.
Yeah, so it's a fun reminder of that, and just such a delightful extra glimpse into the Ediacaran. Like, we did the Ediacaran biota surprisingly early in the podcast for such a
Yeah,
niche topic.
that was year 2.
But so much has been learned since we did that episode. Like,
Hmm.
in that episode, none of the studies that had effectively confirmed animals among the Ediacaran biota had come out, so we didn't know that. Things like this had not been discussed. So, like, when we did that episode, it's not that many years ago, but still a little while back, the Ediacaran was kind of portrayed as this, by comparison to the Cambrian, extremely dull,
Hmm.
extremely inactive, extremely simplified. And yeah, it probably still isn't as high octane as the Cambrian became, but it wasn't just a bunch of blobs sitting in the mud.
Yeah, the Ediacaran more and more feels like the way that we've described dinosaurs,
Hmm.
where so many of the things we think of as bird features were already present in other dinosaurs. So many of
Yes,
the things that we think of as being hallmarks of animal life and modern style ecosystems did get started in the Ediacaran,
absolutely.
which is very cool to keep getting these new glimpses at that.
Yes. So awesome. And my next news actually pairs with that well. It is also about something that got started a little bit earlier than we thought it did.
Oh,
This is about evidence of fleshy fruit in the Cretaceous. This is research by Jamin Lee et al. In Science, and the article is by Sarah Kuta in Smithsonian Magazine. So, flowering plants, angiosperms, are common day plants today, famous for bearing seeds and fleshy fruits meant to be spread and often by animals.
hmm,
Their seeds, have different features for how they're spread, wind and water, but the ones that are spread by animals are often covered in something nutritious and yummy that the animals want to eat.
yes. Seeds, episode 135, fruit, episode 165.
Angiosperms showed up in the Cretaceous about 136 million years ago, and were doing their flowering thing, were doing the things that they're known for, but it was thought that they weren't really doing much of the fruit stuff, that they were
Hmm.
producing small seeds, that they were mostly small and weedy. And it wasn't until after the in Cretaceous that they started to diversify into their reproductive strategies that we see today and started producing fleshy fruit and more complex seeds to be dispersed. Despite the fact that there is evidence that in the Cretaceous, their diversity and abundance was increasing the whole time. Our evidence and the thought was that they didn't really kick off until after the Cretaceous. This study is reporting a bunch of angiosperm fruits and dispersal, some diaspores, dispersal mechanisms, so fruits and seeds and things like that, from the late Cretaceous, 74.6 million years ago,
Ooh.
in New Mexico, the Jose Creek Formation. This is a almost mile long layer of sediment that is formed by ash that settled from a volcanic eruption that snapshotted the environment, froze everything Pompeii style. And so we have this really nice preservation of what was a tropical forest. At the base of the ash layer You can still find ground covering plants and things like that. A bit higher up, you find a bunch of leaves in all kinds of orientation because they were knocked down by the ash onto that bottom layer. And among all of this, they found 77 distinct types of diaspores.
Whoa.
So not
Not
just 77
77?
seeds or fruits.
Yes, 77 types.
Yes.
Wow.
Varying dispersal methods were preserved. 5% of them were winged, so meant to be dispersed by air.
Oh, cool. Like, is it
Right?
maple leaves that do
I
that? It's
think
something.
so.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Allie, but it's the ones that have wings and they like spiral down to the
Yes.
ground.
Yep. So we have some air dispersal seeds. Very cool. 34% of them were fleshy fruits.
Wow.
This is important for a number of reasons. One, they were also not itty bitty. Like, it was thought that seeds, and if we did get fruity things, they just weren't very complex in the Cretaceous. Small little things. These were like grape sized on average. So, like blueberry acorn sized,
Yeah.
which is not a itty bitty fruit.
No,
It's
that's
not
a pretty
big.
sizable.
It's not a mango.
Right, it's not an apple, it's not a
Yeah.
pineapple, but that's a sizable. That's
Mhm.
like you eat it and you like feel satisfied.
Yes, exactly. This is far bigger than the poppy seed sized fruits and seeds that we had in Cretaceous deposits up till now. This also suggests that animal dispersal was likely an important mechanism in this environment back into the Cretaceous. Earlier
Yeah.
than we had thought, that was an important mechanism for angiosperms. There are tons of animals in the Mesozoic, in the Cretaceous, that could have been doing this, and ones who had been proposed to seem like they would be good frugivores, fruit eaters, and spreaders of these kinds of
Mhm.
seeds. But we lacked the evidence of those kinds of fruits for those
Mhm.
animals to be spreading until now.
Yeah, yeah. And this is not only are there tons of dinosaurs and mammals and stuff. This
Mhm.
is late Cretaceous, which means there's loads of birds.
Yes,
And
exactly.
today, birds are excellent seed dispersers.
Yep. This shows that angiosperms had started to diversify their reproductive strategies before the end Cretaceous. So it
Mhm.
wasn't the reshaking of the ecosystem that allowed them to go, "Whoo, maybe we can do something crazy with these seeds." They had been doing it. This suggests that they were experiencing an increased selection for reproductive investment and specialization,
Mhm.
both for like dispersal strategies. It also could be that these were being evolved for some other reason. Maybe the primary purpose wasn't animal dispersal. They note that where was it? I had it somewhere. This also could be some adaptation to the the shift into shady and humid tropical forest environment, that there might have been
Mm.
some advantage there. I don't know if they have a specific thing they're thinking of for that, because it wasn't listed in the paper, in the
Sure.
abstract or the article, as to what that benefit would be. But it might not be animal related, but that seems like a likely possible indicator.
Yeah.
This now also better syncs up with other trends that we had seen in angiosperms of them diversifying their size, leaves, and flowers during this time. So now
Yes.
the dispersal of seeds is not the odd man out in their diversification. They were diversifying that as well, along with other parts of their anatomy before the end Cretaceous.
This also means that Cretaceous critters were eating fruit,
Yeah.
which is very cool. That's
Yep.
just
Yep.
like a fun extra little, much like Sprigina turning to the right.
Hmm.
It's scientifically interesting. It helps with the big picture, but also just the little picture of what did Cretaceous animals have available to eat.
Yep.
This is a cool, just that little image is updated very slightly, which is very cool.
Well, and it's satisfying, and it's what they alluded to on. There's been lots of animals suggested to have been seed eaters, and I've seen that with lots of dinosaurs and pre Cretaceous animals, that they seem like they would be good at that, but we just
Mhm.
didn't have what they were eating. So for this, it's like, yeah, okay, so they were doing that. That they
Yeah,
were indeed eating these little fruits, because that's what you look like you'd be doing.
that's very cool. Also, shout out to Leave It to Us. Episode 1 of season 2 was all about berries and the different
Yeah.
shapes that fruits can take, which is what I started thinking about when you were describing
Hmm.
them as grape sized. Well, We've got one more bit of news to go over, and it is still July, which means snakes.
Snakes.
I've got some news here on research finding distinctive patterns in variation of snake venoms and what it might mean both for the snakes and for people.
Cool.
This is research published in a journal Toxins by Holly Moorcroft et al. And we'll link in the blog post to a press release on Science Daily from the University of Queensland. Last episode, episode 247, we talked about vipers, one of the most famous groups of venomous snakes. This research took place in Australia, looking at Australian snakes. And as we discussed in that episode, that means we are not talking about vipers. We are talking about the other big famous group of venomous snakes, elapids, which are extremely abundant in Australia and also can be extremely dangerous.
Yes.
The venoms of these Australian venomous snakes are often clotting agents. They often cause severe blood clotting, and it's one of the ways that they mess with internal systems. This is a huge problem for humans in Australia because these snakes are not uncommon. And there's been a lot of research into what exactly these venoms are doing inside of the human system, but not as much research in what the venoms do to the animals that the venom is actually for, which is their prey.
Yeah.
And that, because that's what that's where the selective pressures for these venoms come from, is
Yes.
incapacitating prey even more so than warding off threats. So this study tested the venom of various Australian venomous snakes against the plasma of various other animals. So this is like that example that you brought up last episode of the video where they like put a drop of snake venom into a petri dish of blood and it just becomes jello. That's what they were doing in this study.
Yes. Cool.
They tested the venoms against human plasma, blood plasma, as well as chicken, rat, and cane toad.
Okay.
Which are not only a variety of animal types that these snakes might eat, but also taxonomically very diverse.
Yeah.
We've got amphibian, we've got bird, we've got mammals.
I also noticed, unless I'm wrong, all introduced to Australia, all
that's true.
Non-native.
From what I saw looking through the paper, I don't know if that was an intentional choice or my guess is
just
that
what was available.
They're easy to get a hold of.
Yeah, exactly.
If you want chicken blood, you just get some chicken blood.
Yeah, these are also all animals easy to order in the pet trade.
Yes. And they're also animals that no one's going to be upset if you take some extra blood from them.
Yes.
What they noticed is that the venom of these snakes did not all treat all of the different plasmas the same way.
Yeah.
In some species, for example, red-bellied black snakes, they noticed that their venom clotted frog and bird plasma much faster than rat and human. And notably, those snakes are herp specialists. They specialize in eating amphibians and reptiles.
Yeah.
So it seems that their venom has developed to be extra efficient against amphibians, reptiles, and in this case, looping in birds, ancestrally reptilian, while not being particularly effective comparatively against mammals because they're not eating them. But snakes with more generalized diets that are less picky about their prey had similar effects across all the different plasma types.
Yeah, the generalists.
This is interesting because, again, it suggests that the venom has evolved to fit the diet of different snakes, which has been also seen in other snakes. We mentioned this last episode, there are vipers that this same sort of pattern has been seen in, but they also note that this has implications for medical purposes because even the snakes that are frog and lizard specialists still cause rapid clotting in human blood. It's not as effective, but it's still like you go to the hospital effective. It's still very dangerous. And they also found, leaning even more into the human line here, there was variation within the venom of individual species.
Cool.
that different members of the same species, the venom acted differently. Notably, they reported this in eastern brown snakes. Brown snakes in Australia are among the most notoriously dangerous snakes that they have down there, partially because of how dangerous their venom is, but also because of just how widespread they are. That
Yep.
it's relatively easy to come across them.
Well, it's the funny thing because like it's an extremely notorious snake with an extremely mundane name, and it's because they're so common.
Yes, exactly. What the researchers found is that across the different plasmas, northern brown snakes, snakes from northern populations, formed weaker clots in the blood that fell apart more quickly,
Mm-hmm.
which is similar to related species closely related to them. But southern populations of brown snakes, their venom formed stronger and more stable blood clots.
Interesting.
This lines up with a known genetic difference that these are two different clades within brown snakes. These
Yes.
northern tropical populations and these southern temperate populations. It seems that besides their other differences, their venom acts differently. And in fact, the
Yeah.
southern populations venom treats blood more like the venom of taipans and
Huh.
other very dangerous snakes, which is interesting because it seems to be the ancestral condition, and
Gotcha.
that it seems like what happened is brown snakes evolved less strongly clotting venom, and then this population re-evolved that strongly clotting behavior of the venom.
Fascinating.
Ecologically, this is really interesting because it's probably related to their diet or their behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Something about their lifestyle is different, so their venom is behaving differently. Medically, this is extremely relevant because it suggests that broad antivenom might not be useful in all cases.
Yes.
That if brown snake venom is acting differently in different populations because of their dietary differences or their behavior or whatever, that has implications for how we treat bites from different areas in their range.
Yeah, a single brown snake antivenom might not be a one size fits all solution.
Yes, because they're treating the blood differently. One of the authors is quoted in the press release as saying, "Our data shows the effect on blood of an eastern brown snake bite in northern areas versus southern areas are chalk and cheese,
Gross.
neither of which are things you want in your blood."
Those are not adjectives I want near my blood. Nope.
So, what the authors note they want to do next is look through hospital records
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
see, do we see different medical scenarios arising from bites from these different populations of brown snakes? And
Yeah.
if so, can all of this data together help researchers develop more targeted antivenom and treatments that it might be if you got bit in northeastern Queensland, you need a different treatment than if you got bit by the same species somewhere else.
It's so fun being reminded how tailored toxins often are. Like there are toxins out there to where it's like this will kill most anything because it is working on a fundamental chemistry of most animals and it's gonna kill you. But there's a whole bunch out there that's like this is working on a specific aspect of the anatomy of their prey. If it bites you, you won't notice because you are not a mollusk. You are not a whatever they're eating. And it's a thing that just we often treat venoms like that. This means you are this much more deadly. And that's not actually what it often means. You can get
Yeah.
all sorts. I love quoting it, and I'll reference it again. But like the box jellyfish is evolved to eat fish. Its venom is meant for fish. It's very effective on fish. So happens great apes have a very similar chemical trackway in our bodies to the fish they're eating.
Mm-hmm.
Coincidentally, other animals, if they got hit by a box jellyfish, probably would not get it hit as hard as we do. We coincidentally are susceptible.
Yes.
it gave me the thought of it, because we often talk about like when something's not susceptible to something's venom, that it's immune to the venom, which suggests that it built an immunity or that it evolved an immunity.
Right. Which in some cases is true. We do
Yes.
see that.
But it could be just that that venom was not adapted to that prey.
Yeah. Venomous snakes have an overwhelmingly common habit of preying upon mammals.
Yep, exactly.
And they're not preying upon us because we are far too big, but we are made of mammal stuff.
It gave me the thought that in D&D you have species, you have player species that have poison resistance. You should have monsters that have more effective poison to certain groups.
Yes.
This is a predator of elves. If you're playing an elf and you get hit by this attack, you take double damage because
Yes.
the humans and the dwarves aren't the ideal prey, so they just take a little bit of damage.
Yeah, this is a dwarf predator, so you don't get your normal poison resistance to it. That's awesome. All right.
There you go, DMs.
Noted for yes, that's me. And I'm like, ooh, interesting. Love that. Well, that's the news. And with the news out of the way, we can move on to our main attraction for the episode. We're going to take a short break. And then after this brief musical interlude, we will be joined by our special guest for this episode, Lindsay Nikole, who will spend the rest of our episode today geeking out with us about big cats.
Gonna be great.
Hello, Lindsay.
Hello, David and Will.
Hello.
Welcome to Common Descent. Thank you so much for being here to talk with us about big cats. I can think of no better person to join us for this topic.
Oh, I'm honored. I'm very excited to just geek out on big cats for a bit. Thanks for having me. I'm stoked.
Before we get into cats, if you would please introduce yourself for any of our listeners who don't already know who you are.
Absolutely. Yeah, my name's Lindsay Nikole. I'm a science communicator, mostly on YouTube. I talk about animals, evolution, lots of weird animals, prehistoric animals, all that kind of stuff, conservation too. My background before YouTube was working with big cats and, quote, big cats, which I guess we'll get to in a bit. But yeah, animals all around now.
Excellent. Yeah, this episode is, we're in an interesting unbound place in this episode because we already did a cats episode, episode 93. So if listeners, if you want the background on cats as a whole, felids as a whole, go check out that episode. We also did an episode on saber teeth, episode 214, which was half a saber-toothed cats episode. So we are zooming in on big cats as we think of them today for this episode. We're going to get to talk about all of our favorite living big cats, their extinct relatives, and some of, Lindsay, your specific favorite big cats, maybe even by name, maybe even specific individuals you could tell us about.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're going to be talking about the modern biggins. Excited.
So let's begin with a definition. This is one of those cases where it's a definition that's going to be more complicated than people expect it to be.
Yes.
What are big cats?
The classic big cat would be in the genus Panthera. So that's your lions, your tigers, your leopards, your jaguars, your snow leopards. But we're going to expand it a little bit today to include Neofelis, which is the sister group. And that's the clouded leopards, which are kind of relatively big, but compared to the rest of the big cats, maybe one might say not. But I think it's important to include the little guy in this conversation, the little big cat, if that makes sense.
Yes. And that is, of course, the big cats as the sort of official title of big cat, but which does not actually include all of the big, like lowercase b, big cats today.
Yes.
The cats of unusual sizes.
Cats of unusual sizes, who we also want to talk about. So what would big cat in like the broad sense would also include who?
It would also include your cougars, your cheetahs, which are also around the same size as some of those big cats. But taxonomically, they're unfortunately not big cats, capital B.
Yeah, those are large, small cats.
Those are large, small cats. They're in the medium-sized cat category, but that's also the same category as bobcats. And so that might not feel fair because they're a little bit bigger than bobcats. They're big medium cats.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about them too.
Yeah, we're really drawing a weight limit in this episode. I think is like the baseline is, I don't know how big these cats are, but like 100 pounds and up or something.
Yeah. Oh, well, I hate to break it to you, but clouded leopards are a lot smaller than that. But taxonomically, they're just right there. Yeah, they can be like as little as 25 pounds.
Wow.
Oh, incredible. But they're pantherine cats, so
they're pantherine cats, and you don't want them anywhere near you. I mean, you don't want cougars or cheetahs anywhere. All of the cats in this episode, you want nowhere near you.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
These are all the cats that can hospitalize you easily.
Yes.
But that title was too long for the episode, so we went with big cats.
Exactly.
Deadly cats. So obviously big cats, in the sort of broad sense, we're talking about a literal size of these animals for the most part. What, beyond their size, what is important to distinguish? Like, why is big cat an important distinguisher to make? How are these cats different, broadly speaking, than other cats?
Yeah, so the pantherine lineage broke off from the rest of the cats, the earliest, about like 10.8 million years ago. So that's probably the biggest distinguishing factor, is just their evolutionary history. Neofelis, the clouded leopards, broke off from Panthera about 6 million years ago, but they were still in that earliest break-off branch. Another thing that distinguishes Panthera specifically is their ability to roar. So their hyoid is not fully ossified, which allows it to, the way I imagine it is it's like jiggling in there a certain way, and it allows them to make those gnarly roars that would just send chills down your spine, standing anywhere near it.
Yes.
And a lot of those other smaller big cats can purr, but there are exceptions to that, so maybe I won't include that. I think snow leopards can purr. Cheetahs and pumas definitely can. I'm forgetting about leopards, but there's some purring going on. There's some roaring going on. Roaring is really just for the big, capital B, big cats.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is one of those famous distinctions that feels like it should be made up.
Yes.
That,
yeah.
Like, it feels like an old wives' tale, kind of like, yeah, big cats can roar and little cats purr. But no, that is a taxonomic distinction.
This is science we're talking about here.
Yes.
Well, and it's a fun note because I don't know if most people think of purring as a special thing cats are doing. Like it's just a noise they're making, but it's like, no, that is an actual special ability they're able to do because they are not big cats.
Yeah. And how cute is it? What a cute little ability. Just because they're happy, they just start purring. And, some of the big cats have their own ways of expressing happiness. Tigers do this thing called chuffing, which kind of sounds like that. When they're happy, lions will start caroling. They're like big happy roar, and they'll all do it together. Super cute. They all have their ways of expressing happiness, but I think purring is probably the most satisfying to the human ear.
Yeah, it's just so nice.
Anyone with a cat at home knows.
Yep, I was enjoying cats purring just earlier today. And then, of course, as we'll get into in some more detail later, large cats, right, big cats and also, large cats are ecologically important, right? These are some of our biggest predators on land today. And the other thing that I think is so cool about these cats is how culturally significant they are.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God, all over the world.
Yeah, like these are animals that are in mythologies and there's like statues of them, which I guess because if you live where there's tigers, you're going to be talking about tigers.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah, same with lions. And what's crazy, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm just like jumping right to that part of the conversation, but just lions have significance in places that they're not even native to, which I think is so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've become a very symbolic animal in our culture, and it's a noteworthy thing about them.
Absolutely. But we'll dive into that in a bit.
Yeah, well, let's do it. Let's dive in. So before we get to the large small cats, who we will talk about a little later, let's start with the big cats, big capital B, capital C, big cats, pantherine cats. So,
Let's do it.
Lindsay, who are the pantherine big cats? Give us some introductions.
Okay, so we've got the lions, the tigers, the jaguars, leopards, snow leopards. I'll start with the most iconic, in my opinion, the lion. I think
That
we
would
can
be
all
my
agree
vote.
that the lion is the most iconic.
Yes.
Found throughout Africa. They live in prides, which is typically made up of females that are all related to each other, and one or a couple dominant males that come in and earn their spot via pretty violent competition.
Hmm. They're throwing each other off of cliffs into stampedes.
Yeah, exactly.
We've seen the documentaries.
Yeah. We we've seen those yeah, The Lion King, the famous documentary. Yes. Yeah, I mean, what a crazy structure, like compared to the rest of the big cats. Like it is the most social, it's the most complex. For a long time, it was thought that, well, I guess the jury's out on who the more dominant sex is in the pride.
Mhm.
But I think for a long time, it was thought that the males were, the big macho head honcho. And in a way, they are, but the females do take care of a lot of the hunting, and the males just lay back and come in and feast after being lazy all day in many instances.
Yes.
It's just more complex. But yeah, man, lions are just, they can get pretty, I want to say they can get to like 400 pounds, maybe a little bit more. And what's crazy is when you think about that weight, it sounds big, but it doesn't sound massive, especially when we think about like animals that existed millions of years ago. But then when you see 400 pounds on a cat, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, you are crazy looking.
Yeah.
Well, because they're svelte, they're toned. It's like
Yeah, it is pure muscle.
it's like a 400-pound gymnast, which,
Yes.
which
Exactly.
is wild.
Yeah, it is a 400-pound competitive bodybuilder. Yeah,
Yes.
they are just gnarly. And yeah, they have this intensity in their eyes that I guess is something else I'll mention about all of the big capital B cats is they all have round pupils. And so
Right.
in some ways, I think that makes them feel more similar to us. But I
Mhm.
also think that the intensity, and I say this from experience working with them in like sanctuary settings, is like there's an intensity in their eyes that makes their eyes look not real. It makes them look fake, and it's really
Yeah.
freaky because it is similar to our eyes, but just it's like so different. I don't know if that makes sense, but
No, yeah.
yeah, lions. Anyway, yeah, I think the craziest thing that I learned about them, throughout my earlier years was just their tendency to do infanticide, commit infanticide,
Yep.
where, a male will just come in if he takes over a pride and kill all of the cubs that aren't his. There have been some females documented leaving when they realize that a fight is going the wrong way and escaping and leaving with their cubs to save them,
Wow.
which is
Oh, interesting.
really, really complex understanding of, like what's going on, which I think is really interesting.
I mean,
Yeah.
it makes sense why they've gotten compared to monarchies because, like, there are
Mhm.
stories of that of monarchies change, countries changing hands, and the exact same things happening. It makes sense why we've compared lions to royalty because they are having similar Game of Thrones esque drama happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. You're so right.
It does
Cool.
make me wonder because, like you said, Lindsay, lions are the most social of the big cats. They're also, I believe, by far the most social cats, period. Like, cats are
Yeah.
generally, I guess, house cats are another sort of exception that they can be sort of gregarious.
Yeah, and then with that, it's like, that's so much of our influence on them.
Yeah.
Yes.
And from what I've heard is with those cat groups, they're not hunting together, they're mostly just living together.
Yeah,
Yeah, they just
exactly.
have a little community going on. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, with lions being the only really heavily social living cats, it makes me wonder, is that structure just a lion thing, or is this how you be a social cat? Is there something about cat lifestyles that it's like, if you're gonna make this
Mm.
work, there's gonna have to be this intense, this violence that's sort of inherent in it? Is it because it's just a bunch of, as we discussed in episode 93, slinkies made of knives? And if you're gonna have a community of knife slinkies, that's just gonna happen. Is there just gonna be violence? And of course, this is speculative because we have one example, and so it's very
Yes.
difficult to know.
Yeah, that is a good point. And, it can also make us think of our own path to our own social complexity and like how much of that is just, I mean, chance, not chance, but how many directions could it have gone in terms of, that social complexity. I think the only species I could compare them to is cheetahs, where males do live in small coalitions
Yeah.
of 1 or 2 to 3 males, but that's about as social as they get. The only other time that females interact with them is to mate. So yeah, other than that, like cats are pretty solitary.
Well, and
Yeah.
it also brings up the question of, are lions as intense as they are because of where they are? Like the African savannas is a pretty intense place to live. Like
Yeah,
competitions out there, they're not the only big predator. The prey you're hunting are not pushovers. These are
Yeah.
some of the largest herbivores on the planet, and things are just tough and intense, so that you can't have the calmer coexistence that might be available in other situations.
that's very true. Yeah, like the entire continent, lions are also dealing with other cat species as competitors
Mhm.
in a way that does exist, I guess, in South America with
Yeah.
jaguars and pumas, but there's so much going on the African continent. You're right that lions just had to become the top dogs, and they do a
Yeah.
very good job at doing that.
Yeah. Who's next? Who's next on our Panthera
All right,
list?
next up, boom, second most popular, the tiger. You know
Yeah.
them, you love them. They have the stripes, which might be a surprise to find out, actually stretched rosettes. So those stripes evolve to become
Oh.
longer and thinner and longer and thinner, because the classic cat pattern is a rosette. But in
Oh.
order to blend into the long grass, they're just like a big fat leopard.
Yeah, those are just long spots.
Yeah, they're long spots.
That's so cool. I did not know that.
This is the big mind blow of the episode.
Oh, when you look at the tiger stripes like in a picture, you can
Yeah.
see how they look like stretched rosettes.
Yeah, exactly. They're not bands, they are individual swooshes.
Exactly.
I want to make a
Yeah.
poster that's titled Spotted Cats and having the tiger there and just waiting for people to come up and go, and we go, actually.
Just nerd rage baiting.
Yep.
Yeah. And you know what? You absolutely should. Because at the end of the day, you're correct.
Yes.
That's so cool.
Tigers are, there's so much I can say about tigers. I mean, there's so many different subspecies. And I will say, the Siberian tiger, a lot of people think Siberian tigers are white tigers. That's not true. White tigers are really only found in captivity. Siberian tigers are just orange tigers, but they're massive. They're really, really big. They're the biggest ones. They can get up to like 800, 900 pounds. I've worked with Siberian tigers that they were a pair of brothers, and they were each 650 pounds. And that was enough tiger for me. I cannot imagine 800 pounds of tiger.
That's 800 pounds is a bear.
Yeah.
At that
800
point,
pounds is a bear. It
That's
should
a
not be a
bear.
cat.
Well, and this
That's
goes
too much
back
muscle.
to
Yeah.
what's so special about big cats is that, like, yeah, outside of bears and things like crocs, right? These are among the largest land predators on the planet. Like that's almost half a ton of cat in a tiger, and that's colossal.
Too much tiger. Way too much tiger, if you ask me. And then you think about some of those prehistoric species that did get to half a ton. No, thank you. I love my cats, but I'm glad there's no 1,000-pound cats running around today. That would not be great. But yeah, I mean, and the thing, I guess the sad transition from that topic to this one would be the damage that we do on tigers just far outweighs the damage that they do to us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
White tigers only exist because there was one white tiger back in the 1950s found in the wild named Mohan, or we named him Mohan. It was a pattern that we had never seen before, took him into captivity to breed him with all these other tigers, and bred him with his offspring to make more white tigers. And now every white tiger today, for the most part, can be traced back to Mohan. They're all in captivity. It's a horrible situation. A lot of people think that the Siberian tiger is the white tiger that lives in the snow, and it's just not true.
Mm-hmm.
The white tiger is pretty much man-made. You could argue it's a man-made tiger, but they have, the blue eyes. They have a hard time seeing in the sun because they're just, it's just not right for them.
So between the two of those, lions and tigers, these are our biggest cats.
Yes.
And because of their size, they are uniquely influential on their ecosystems. So
Absolutely.
what are they hunting? What is like regular lunch for lions and tigers?
Lions, I'm going to be a lot more familiar with. I mean, a pride of lions is capable of taking down a water buffalo, which is gnarly. Like, water buffalo are crazy. They can take down, young elephants.
Mm-hmm.
They can take down giraffes, which is crazy. Giraffes seem like spectators of the savannah,
Mm-hmm.
Same with elephants, but the babies are always at risk. They can take down anything they want. And when it comes to living close by or in lion territory, I mean, that's a horrible situation to be in. Once lions go into a new area that they weren't in before, I mean, the way that people have to act, like even if there's leopards in the area, if there's cheetahs in the areas, once a lion pride comes in, their entire lifestyle has to change because they're just so strong and so like they feel like this unstoppable force in many ways.
Yeah.
Obviously, weapons aside, and that gets into some human wildlife conflict stuff that is really, really unfortunate. But yeah, they can take down anything they want. Tigers, I would say so too.
I know tigers will go after because lions are group hunters, right? Uniquely among cats, which is why they can do like young elephants and wildebeest and stuff. Whereas to my knowledge, a tiger will preferentially go for things like, I don't know, deer and pigs and stuff that is like a reasonable size for an individual tiger to take down.
Yeah, any antelope, anything in the ungulate territory is on the menu, I would say.
Yeah. So then we've got the third sort of big famous old world member of this lineage, which are leopards.
Yes. The slinky freaks. They jump out of trees.
Yes.
They come out of nowhere. You never see them. I have my own issues with leopards because I have yet to see one in the wild, and it's pissing me off. They're so hard to see. You can see, like, I've seen their kills that they've dragged up into a tree and then ate and left the carcass of there. Like, I've seen that. And they can drag their prey up into a tree that's like 60 feet up. It's crazy. Their strength is like none other. I think they can get to, like 200 to 300 pounds, maybe a little less than that, like 150. And they can pull things like 2 or 3 times, maybe even more, their body weight up into a tree. They're scary. They're freaks. They're complete freaks. But one of the cool things about leopards is how frequently melanism comes into the picture. Your classic Black Panther. And that's true with jaguars too. Melanistic leopards in some areas are even more frequent than your classic leopard pattern. Overall, it's about 11% of the population of leopards are melanistic. Wow. Which is really cool. They're stunning to look at. And I guess in certain habitats, it makes sense for them to just be fully black, which, that's gnarly to look at.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's videos of leopards like literally dropping out of trees onto prey, which is just crazy.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that definitely stands out the most about them to me is how fast and sure they are in trees for a big predator. Like
Yeah.
watching like a house cat or something that size move in a tree is like, yeah, you're the correct size to be in trees. But then you watch a leopard, just like you said, just carry something up a tree, barely slowing down, and then move through the branches and fall out of the tree onto something. And you're far too comfortable that far off the ground for how big you are. Like you're my sized, and I should not be up in a tree like that.
Yeah. I would love to know how much trial and error there is for like figuring out what branches they can handle
Yeah.
and can't, you know? Like, are they falling out of trees all the time? Do we even see them enough to know? Probably not.
Yeah. Well, they also, I can't think of many other animals that hunt from the tree. Like
Mhm.
drop out. That's a D&D move. That's like,
Yeah.
yeah, people don't actually do that. Like you jump off of a high place to attack somebody because that's incredibly dangerous. You're just going to hurt yourself doing it. Leopards actually do hunt that way, which is a preposterous way for a large animal to hunt.
Can I say something crazy?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is this maybe the beginning of a gliding cat?
Ooh.
Because if you think about it, a lot like flying snakes, they glide through trees,
Mhm.
right? I mean, when we think about the origin of flight in birds, one of the hypotheses is like jumping down and starting to glide to capture prey. Is this the beginning of a behavior that could lead to gliding cats? I would love to see it.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe not.
If you don't see it coming.
Yes. Just future leopard pterosaurs.
Yes.
Well, I also am curious because lions and tigers, to my understanding, don't actually overlap in the wild, or if they do, it's very rare.
No.
Whereas
Correct.
leopards live where lions live. And
Yep.
I've always kind of assumed that the tree dwelling habits of leopards are maybe a strategy for carving out a living for yourself in an ecosystem where lions also exist.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. I mean, they have to be able to escape lions. And, you know, especially compared to cheetahs, like cheetahs will mostly try to avoid lion habitats. And leopards instead were like, I'll just hang out in the trees. I'm chilling. I think leopards might also overlap with tigers because they're all over Africa and Asia. They're in parts
That's
of Asia. And
true.
so I'm not sure how frequently they overlap, if they do at all.
They do in the Jungle Book.
Something I can look into for the show notes.
Yes.
But yeah.
They're just like
Yeah.
they're, can I say badass?
Sure.
Yeah.
They're the badass little guys.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
well, and like you said, they're just so it's unnerving how capable they are for how that they aren't one of the biggest ones, that they just pull a body up into a tree. This was a theme from last episode, but here again, leaving skeletalized bodies in trees is very Predator. It's very like
Yes.
you're leaving the trophies of your kills hanging in the trees that you
Yeah.
carried up there. It's very cool.
It's so cool. It sounds like something out of a movie. It doesn't sound real. And it's a mammal doing it. Like, how cool.
Yeah.
I would argue, I might say, in terms of overall strategy, that leopards might be the S tier of all the cats. Just with how elusive they are and how strong they are, how quick they are. I mean, they're just like, they're so slinky and that just seems, that is like the classic cat idea.
I think this calls for a cats tier list video.
Yeah.
So.
Might need to add that to the list.
I mean, they do have one of the better superheroes tied to them. Like, leopards do have Black Panther. So, like,
Very
this
true.
is true.
Of the movies made with a cat's name, they have a pretty good one. Lions do have Lion King, but Black Panther was real good.
Black Panther was really good. Yeah. And I guess maybe this is a good place to move to the other Black Panther, the jaguar.
Oh, sure. Do you want to hop continents?
Yeah, let's hop continents. Let's go over to South America. Yeah. So jaguars can also be Black Panthers. Melanism in jaguars is controlled by a dominant allele. So they're actually relatively common. But jaguars are also one of the heftiest of the big cats. I would like to say that they're about the size of lions. And there's a lot of confusion between, telling the difference between a leopard and a jaguar. If you were to drop somewhere and not know what continent you're on, the easiest way to tell is leopards have hollow rosettes. It just looks like a Cheerio. And jaguars have a rosette with spots in it.
Yeah.
So maybe a Cheerio in a bowl of milk with cinnamon in it. Let's call it that.
Yep.
Pretty similar. And then jaguars overall have a really stocky, bulky, thick head.
They just look so beefy, just like a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In many ways, you like jaguars. If jaguars and leopards were the same species, leopards would be the female, jaguars would be the male.
Yeah.
Just in overall look. Yeah.
I always forget how big jaguars are because here in the Americas we don't have big cats, or in North America we don't, we have pumas, but pumas we'll talk about later. Puma's big, but it's not a lion, it's not a tiger. And then I forget that a jaguar is lion sized. These are huge animals.
Yeah, they're big. And you know what? They're coming back to the US. Have you seen the news?
No, I haven't actually.
So they historically had a range that went up into Arizona and everything. And then because of, political issues, were not really able to return there. And so their range shrunk a little bit.
They didn't have passports.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But now some jaguars are getting passports and showing up in Arizona. There was one jaguar in particular. I want to say, I saw the article a couple months ago. So I don't know if it happened, maybe a year ago or just a couple months ago. But yeah, the thought of jaguars in Arizona is pretty crazy, because I think we tend to think of them as way isolated down in South America, not even coming up into Central America.
Deep in the Amazon is where
you
see them portrayed.
Yeah, exactly. But they might be coming back up, and I'm here for it.
I don't live in Arizona. I'm on board.
Yeah, I'm on board. But they are one of those that are, like we were talking about before we started recording, they're pretty aquatic, like crocs can be. They can hunt in the water.
Yeah, I was going to say, my poor gators.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing that always first comes to mind for me with jaguars is they are caiman hunters, specialists. They have specialist techniques for taking down the smaller species of caiman. Like a full-grown black caiman and a full-grown alligator would be too big, but young gators and smaller caimans are right in size for them, and they go for that brain case bite.
Yeah.
Watch out, gators.
This is another sort of habitat distinction, right? Lions cover a wide array of habitats, but we think of them as savanna animals. There are desert dwelling populations. Tigers are more forested areas. Jaguars are rainforest, like Amazon, the sort of tropical jungle environments, and doing a lot of stuff in water. Also, I believe this is, and I might be misremembering this, jaguars, I believe, are noted, most big cats go for that jugular bite as they're I'm going to take out the prey. Is that bite it on the throat or on the face? Jaguars, I believe, are in the habit of biting through the brain case.
I believe you're right. Yep.
Because that's how they take
have
out
a
caimans.
Crazy bite force. Yeah.
And
just
crunch
that's horrifying.
Through. Yes.
They're bone crushers. Yeah, they're serious bone crushers.
Yeah. They are, when I think of jaguar, I think of power.
Yeah.
Because tigers are big and they're very also, and we haven't mentioned, this is the case for all of the cats we've mentioned so far, but tigers come to mind the most for me just because of how big they are. All of these animals are also incredibly athletic and agile. Usually when you're the weight of a bear, that description does not follow. When I think grizzly bear, agility and grace is not the first thing that comes to mind. They're fast, but they're not, leaping and dodging and everything. But these cats are they can leap, they can move. But when I think of jaguar, I think power. They're just powerhouses.
Yeah, just meatheads, pure muscle.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And this might be a quick little tangent, but one thing that just came to mind when you said that is I did a video comparing carcinization, evolution turning things into crabs, and the tendency for evolution to turn things into cats, which I'm calling catinization.
Yes.
There's no official term for it, but I think there should be one. But one of the big differences between the crab form and the cat form is that the crab form seems to be reversible. You can do something else. You can become crab shape and then evolve to not be crab shape anymore. But cat kind of seems to be the end of the line. They're so specialized, they're so hyper specialized that there's no turning back once they become that form, which I think is interesting because we think of it as like the biggest, the most powerful, the most like these are the apex predators, but in many ways that apex predator form is really sensitive.
Yeah. Well, it's and we've mentioned this previous times we've talked about cats that I think often falls under the radar because we're so used to cats as animals, but they are unusual for being hyper carnivores. Like only meat all the time. That is actually a very specialized diet, even if you're general in what meat you eat. The fact that you can only eat meat means, it would be hard to get an herbivorous cat because there's really no way to make the baby steps away from what they're doing because they can't start taking on fruit.
Yeah. There's a lot of people who show up to big cat sanctuaries wondering why we're not feeding them a diet of fruits and vegetables or a vegan diet to be more sustainable. It's like they will die if we do that. Like they can't do that. They need meat.
Now, I believe there is, while we're in the genus Panthera, going back to the old world, there is, speaking of specialists and really impressive animals in unusual habitats, there is one more species to discuss.
Yes. Let's jump back to the Asian continent, into Central Asia, into the mountains of Central Asia, and find the ghost of the mountains, the snow leopard. They are maybe the cutest of all the big cats because they're so fluffy. They have those they're so cute. Those big paws, that big tail. But man, oh man, can they do some damage. They can leap like 50 feet. I mean, they're, ambushing sheep on the cliff sides and doing all these crazy maneuvers. Snow leopard is wherever they are, I don't want to be anywhere near them. Looking at a distance through not even binoculars, a telescope, if that's even possible. I want to be so far away from them. But actually, they don't have that lion style roar either, which adds to the cuteness factor. They do like the little growls, hisses, they'll hiss. They'll do a little meow, some chuffing, kind of like tigers, but they are some serious cute danger balls.
When we were talking about leopards, so leopards, Panthera pardus, separate species, Panthera uncia, snow leopards, they are separate species, but when we were talking about leopards navigating in trees and hunting by jumping out of trees, I was thinking about, well, snow leopards are doing the same thing, but on like mountainside cliffs. And you see these incredible videos of them like diving onto mountain goats. And it's like a 30-foot fall onto the mountain goat. And then it's another like 50-foot fall after you've grabbed the mountain goat. It's like properly extreme living.
It is extreme living.
Well, and watching them chase something up and down a cliff, like in pursuit, climbing a cliff at speed.
Yeah, it's like gravity doesn't exist. Like they've adapted to just ignore gravity. Because you watch those videos and it seems like you have to constantly remind yourself that they are doing this on cliffs that are like hundreds of feet up. How there is no existence of fear of heights in snow leopards. That is just not ever possibly a thing.
Yeah, and you were mentioning they have these adaptations for high elevation cold habitats. They've got dense fur, they've got snowshoes, big wide feet.
Yep. They also have super wide nasal cavities.
Oh, that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Very cool. They're also the exact color of an animal that lives in the snow. Like they look like the snow, the DLC skin that you can get for your leopard for the snow environment. Like
Yes.
they're that those grays and like kind of like steelish bluish and white throughout the coat. Like
Totally.
it's exactly the video game skin I want for my snow field cat.
Whoever names them snow leopard was right on the money. They got that one exactly right.
And then, so all of these big cats we've talked about so far are capital B big cats, the genus Panthera.
Yep.
The Pantherine lineage, as you mentioned
Mhm.
earlier, includes one other not big cat, which are clouded leopards. And we can show them some
Yes.
love before we move on.
Yes, let's show them some love. They are so, so cute, aren't they? Also, a leopard-looking little cat. Medium-sized, not little, but they do get to like 25 to 50 pounds. I mean, that's small compared to like the 700-pound cats that we were just talking about.
Yep.
They are the closest thing to saber-toothed cats that we have today because their
Yes.
canines are gnarly. Their jaws can open to like a little less than 90 degrees, which is
Wow.
kind of insane.
Yeah.
I believe there's 2 species of clouded leopards alive today, and they are just all over the trees, just like their leopard brethren, but not really brethren, but in a way brethren, yes.
Yes.
But yeah, they're super cute. They're really just cute.
Yeah, evolutionarily speaking, the closest relatives to true big cats. But like you were saying, things keep evolving towards cats. Things also keep evolving into saber-toothed cats specifically. And
Yep.
yeah, clouded leopards are often the ones that when you look at research on saber-toothed cats and like what were they doing with their teeth, clouded leopards often come up as like the closest modern comparison we can find because they've got these really impressive canines. Although they are, I believe, still round canine.
Yes, the conical tooth.
And not narrow blade shaped like we see in the true saber-toothed cats.
Right. Yep. They're just a classic case of convergent evolution a little bit.
That's how I first learned about them, was that comparison being made, and I got introduced to a skull of one and being shown it. That's how I first learned that clouded leopards were a thing.
Yeah, because they aren't talked about as much as the other big cats or the pantherine cats. Another thing I want to point out about clouded leopards, which is very cool, is they can go down trees head first like squirrels.
Oh yeah.
Oh, cool.
That's pretty cool.
That's really awesome.
These are, I think that this is a thing that's true all across cats, is that they are surprisingly diverse in their specializations.
They are.
Like you've got, we talked about leopards, we've got clouded leopards who are tree specialists. You've got lions in the desert. You've got snow leopards doing snow leopard stuff. It's a really versatile, for as specialized and unique as they are, this is a really versatile body and lifestyle.
Yeah, I can't think of a single terrestrial habitat that a cat couldn't exist in.
Yeah.
Or doesn't exist in.
Well, and it's so impressive, I think, also because if you just put them in a lineup, they're all still very similarly shaped. Like, it's not like they're getting super, it's not like the tree dwelling ones have long prehensile tails, like, tree anteaters and stuff. They all still look very cat shaped with little adjustments, but they are actually very specialized for different ways of living.
Yeah, the cat body form just works that well.
Yeah.
Versatile.
Well, having discussed our modern representatives of the Pantherine lineage, what do we know, moving back into their deep history, what do we know about the origins of this lineage? What are our when do they show up? Do we have early fossils? What's our picture of the early evolution of this group of big cats?
Yeah, so if we go back early, at the root of this tree is a little cat called Pseudailuris. This was one of the earliest cats. You guys might have talked about them in the general cats episode.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. But they're like this weird group of cats that are like all these different fossils found all over the world. There was a big cat gap that kind of made Pseudailerus this like waste basket of early cats. Just a concept of a cat is really what Pseudailerus is. And then at some point, about 10.8 million years ago, the Pantherine lineage split off and started doing their own thing. Some of the biggest ancient examples would be like the American lion, the cave lion, the monstrous lions of the Ice Age is really, I think, when the big cats made a name for themselves. Those were some of the biggest cats up there with Smilodon. I want to say the American lion is the biggest cat to ever exist that we know of, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, at like 1,000 pounds.
Also, great scientific names. Panthera atrox. Oh,
sexy.
That's such a good name.
It's so good.
So big cat, as we sort of this idea of big cat, you mentioned that cat-like things have kept showing up, and obviously we had stuff like saber-toothed cats, but pantherine big cats are really a pretty modern innovation. Like, this is a group that you mentioned split off only about 10 million years ago. If I remember correctly, the move over into the Americas, because these are, most of them are Old World. The move into the Americas was somewhere around the Pleistocene, somewhere during the Pleistocene trips across the Beringia, and then jaguars made it down in the Gabi when North and South America connected. So this is a pretty this is pretty a hallmark of the modern world, is this sort of distribution of big cats.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we are lucky to exist at a time when our apex predators are cats.
Yeah.
And I mean, if we go back further, like the dinosaurs, obviously, but I think it's safe to say that there wasn't, okay, actually, I don't want to upset anyone by saying this because immediately I'm thinking of like terror birds, but like the lineage of big cats and their success is something that hasn't been seen in mammals really like this ever before. I can't really think of another mammalian. Like, there were some hypercarnivores that were also in the carnivorous lineage, maybe tens of millions of years ago, like that. The bear dogs, the dog bears, the hyenodon. Actually, I think hyenodon wasn't a carnivoran. I can't remember. But cats and their hyper carnivore lifestyle and their apex predator position and everything, just in pretty much every ecosystem on land, is really special.
No, they really are the mammalian theropods.
Yeah.
Like, there's not another mammalian group that has done it as ubiquitously and completely as cats have. Like, wolves are very successful and they're on many continents, but they're not nearly as diverse in how they're being predators. Bears are all over the place, but once again, they're not the just commonplace dominant predator the way big cats often are. Like, they really are doing what theropods were doing of, hey, we are going to be the dominant top predator in almost every terrestrial ecosystem you can name. And that's impressive. Yeah.
And we're going to have miniature versions that are also heinous predators.
Yes.
Because there's no mini bears.
Well, and like you were just alluding to, the big cat distribution not very long ago was even more widespread and diverse, because you had like cave lions, Panthera spelaea, which were European. This was Europe's local lion. And then North America had Panthera atrox, American lions, which was the North America's native lions. This was a time like you could not go anywhere without having a pantherine enormous cat in the neighborhood.
Yeah, they have shaped our evolution so much because of that, because we had to avoid them. We had to learn how to exist near them, exist away from them, survive in spite of them.
Yeah, which is an excellent point, because even though, they are not, like you made the point with tigers, we are much more a danger to these big cats than they on any regular basis are to us, but we are within the prey size category of most of the species around today, and definitely the fossil ones. We absolutely would have had to be careful if we were in the American lion's territory, because we're smaller than most of the things it's hunting, so
Yeah,
we were absolutely
absolutely.
potentially on the menu.
There's that one fossil of a hominin, and its skull was completely crushed, and like in it embedded were some sort of felid
Yep.
teeth. I can't
Yep.
remember if they were mecharodonts or big cats, but yeah, I mean we've dealt with that. Like that was a big pressure on us to survive in the way that we did.
I think that's an excellent point and something really valuable to keep in mind, that big cats have been part of human environments the whole time,
Yep.
right? Like our species and our close relatives and ancestors all came from Africa. And for a long time, the
Yeah.
hominid evolutionary story is exclusively an African story with lions and leopards. There are fossils and footprints of these big cats at famous hominid localities like Laetoli and things like that. And then as we spread up into Europe, so did cave lions. And in Asia, you have tigers and you have snow leopards. And then we crossed over Beringia to come into the Americas, but so did jaguars and American lions. And by the time we got down to South America, there were jaguars. Like, this has always been, we have evolved alongside cats basically the entire time. I guess Australia's the one exception of like a place that pantherine cats didn't get to, that humans, that's where they went to escape.
Yes.
Yeah, but even they had their own weird marsupial cats. They had like the marsupial lion and everything. We just couldn't escape cats. And I wonder how much of our desire to explore new places was driven by trying to get away from cats. And then we get to a new place, we're like, oh my God, there's another cat. We have to keep going. Oh my God, there's another cat.
This is why we're so determined to get to Mars. Like, surely there's no cats on Mars.
Oh man.
Well, and it also makes me think about when we were talking about like why are lions social the way they are, and this, it's not because of big cats that we are social. I'm not suggesting that, but us being highly social and organized apes could be one of the reasons we were successful, because we can defend from a lion attack because there's 12 of us, and we can survive these big predators more easily than if we were living in small family groups or as individuals. It might have been part of why we were able to survive living alongside the heyday of big predators again.
Absolutely. Yeah, a couple years ago, again, a little sidebar, but I got interested in like why body dysmorphia exists and why social anxiety exists in like an evolutionary context, and all of it comes back to, it seems to come back to not wanting to stand out in your herd. And so that was probably driven by those cats.
Yeah,
those freaking cats.
It's you don't want to seem like a potential target because you're, like you said, sticking out.
Yeah.
Well, and this is, this episode, we are in the midst of the summer. We have been talking a lot about crocs and snakes, and crocs and snakes are one of the things that unites the two is this link to human culture and history that, like, yes, snakes and they show up in mythology and they affected our evolution, and like we've been living with them forever. Big cats slot in a very similar position, but they are a wholly unique sort of environmental hazard. Like, crocs and snakes are dangerous, but crocs and snakes don't come after you. They're not like gonna follow you back home to try to get a meal. Big cats are extremely effective and efficient predators, and at the same time, we have a lot in common with them, being large mammalian predators. And so it's no wonder that they ended up being so culturally significant, where we're like, these things are huge and they're dangerous, and they're also impressive in ways that we can really wrap our heads around and understand. They're like aspirational.
Yep. Yeah, there's an intelligence that we can recognize. There is, some might argue that big cats can hold a grudge and really actually come searching for you. And there are plenty of, like stories like that. And then there's also the element of like, yes, these animals are huge and powerful. And also, for thousands of years, we have been trying to tame them in a way that we haven't really done with other animals. I mean, we've domesticated dogs, we've domesticated cats, but like taking a lion and bringing it to roam and having it in a battle and all of that, or using it as a form of, killing somebody in the middle of the Colosseum, or like all that kind of stuff, like that is a uniquely cat thing. And the way that they show up all over cultures that they aren't even naturally a part of, like you go to England and there's lions everywhere, and they've been there for hundreds if not thousands of years as statues and all of that, and just all over Europe. Yeah, they're really unique in that way. They've become symbols of pride, of strength, of, what's the word I'm looking for?
The best that I have and in my head is specifically courage.
But I mean, that is, they are one of those animals that we fear but we aspire to.
Yeah.
That they are used as this totem and heraldry symbols of, this is something to be embodied, the power, the confidence, the bravery of a big cat. They are seen as noble in many regards.
Yeah, they're powerful and dangerous, but they're not evil.
Yeah.
The way that like snakes or like eat crocs in some cases are. This is
or
like
spiders and things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, totally. I think jaguars are a great example of that. Like in South American cultures, they're seen as like the god of the underworld, but also as a protector.
Yes.
Like both of those things at the same time.
Yeah, it is. This is an animal to be feared, but there are things we can learn from it, and that we should learn from it. And that we have looked up to them, and it's very cool.
Well, that's big cats proper, capital B big cats, the true big cats, as it were. But there are other cats who happen to be big for us to talk about, including some that I know that we have intentionally left for last for Lindsay's benefit.
Yes.
We're going to take a short break, and then after this brief musical interlude, we'll talk about some of the cats of unusual size, including the ones closest to home for us, the three of us being United Statesians. Stay tuned. So as we mentioned earlier in the discussion, the big cats are not the only big cats around in the world today. Namely, there are a couple other species of large-sized cats who both happen to belong to the same lineage. They happen to be closely related. This, as opposed to the Panthera lineage, which we talked about in the first half, this is the Puma lineage. So, Lindsay, who are the Puma lineage cats, starting with the obvious one?
The first Puma lineage cat is, you guessed it, the puma, also known as the cougar, the mountain lion, that classic American cat. North and South America, Central America as well. Depending on where you're at, it'll be called something else. Yeah, they get to about 200 pounds, I want to say, somewhere around there. And despite being a little bit smaller than the capital B big cats, they have the personality of a capital B big cat.
Yeah.
They hiss, they spit, they are roughhousing, they are down with the get down. Out of all the cats that I've worked with, pumas scared me the most, even compared to tigers and lions, because they have a feistiness like none other, in my opinion. Yeah. So that's the first of the Puma lineage, the namesake of the Puma lineage. The entire Puma lineage diverged like 6 to 7 million years ago.
That one's for the kids.
Yeah, that's for the kids. And just imagine that I did the 6'7" thing.
She did. We're on video. We can confirm that
Yeah, I
Lindsay
did it
did
twice.
do
Don't
the
worry about it.
6'7" thing.
The other puma lineage big cat, lowercase b big cat, is the cheetah. But before I get to the cheetah, I want to talk about the third puma lineage cat that is often overlooked because it is not a bigger cat. It's a smaller cat, the jaguar Wendy. You might have never heard of it.
Oh, I've heard that name.
Yeah, they're little freaks. They look like otters. You would expect them to be more closely related to otters than cats.
Yeah.
They're often called otter cats. Weirdly, though, they don't really have a semi-aquatic lifestyle. I think they'll like pop in and out a little bit, but I first learned about jaguarondis when I was doing a video on, quote, semi-aquatic cats, like the fishing cat, the flat-headed cat. Looked into the jaguarondi, I was like, that's definitely a semi-aquatic cat. But no, they just look like otters. So
weird.
They're super cute.
Are they arboreal? Like, do they hang out in trees?
That's
Because I look at them, and my immediate thought is that they look like a fossa, which is a Madagascar knot cat that are very arboreal, and it has a similar sort of low slung, long body.
Yeah. You know what's funny is when I found out they weren't semi-aquatic, I was like, oh, got it. Case closed, and looked into nothing else about them.
Moving on.
I was a little frustrated, but I do think that they spend most of their time on the ground.
Interesting. So they're like weasel cats.
Yeah, exactly. They tend to just eat rodents, as you would probably expect. They get to about 20 pounds, so you might have a house cat at home that big. Yeah. They're just cute little guys, found in Central and South America.
So before we move on to the grand finale of our list of cats, pumas, I want to linger on pumas for a second because there's a couple things about pumas that I think are really interesting. One is that you alluded to this. This is the North American cat species. Like, this is our big cat. If you live in North America and you have heard of any of these names for big cats, that's pumas. That is this species of cats. I believe their historical range was also the largest of all living cats. That these historically went coast to coast and Canada to Argentina.
Yep. Literally all over the Western Hemisphere. They were the Western Hemisphere cat.
Yeah. You talking about them being feisty made me remember I used to do field work out in the Black Hills in South Dakota, and there are mountain lions out there, and we would talk to a bunch of the rangers, and two things stick out in my mind about in relation to cougars. One was listening to the rangers talk about the cougar activity in the area, and that like it would just be like the middle of the night and you would hear a cougar fight happening somewhere. Just this just awful, there's some sort of cat UFC showdown happening on a mountainside somewhere, and then they would find like signs of it in the morning, like blood and fur and stuff from this fight that happened. And I also remember this, I was thinking about when, Lindsay, when you were talking about leopards and having never seen one, I remember my professor who led the field work out there used to talk about how he has seen every North American megafauna in the wild except for mountain lions.
Wow.
And we would talk to the rangers and they would talk about how many mountain lions there were. And I just remember standing in the middle of a valley one time thinking, I wonder how many mountain lions see me right now.
Yep.
Because they're elusive, they are extremely impressive, and they're everywhere. They're ubiquitous in some parts of the Americas.
They are. And yeah, I'm in LA, and you know, I've gone biking, especially when I lived over near the mountains. Like I would bike in the mountains all the time, you know, just right in the middle of LA. Griffith Park, I don't think has any mountain lions, but like the Santa Monica Mountains, there are some. And I would think about that all the time. Like, how many cougars have seen me while I'm biking? And I'm just with my AirPods listening to music, you know. because you spend a lot of time, like the time that I've spent in Africa when I'm going on a run or a walk, I do not have both of my AirPods in because I'm thinking about all the wildlife out there. And then I would have these realizations when I'm biking in those mountains in LA of like, well, I'm kind of dealing with a similar thing. Like I could have a run-in that I'm not prepared for. And it just goes to show how adaptable they are and everything. But unfortunately, that does make them super susceptible to tons of, human wildlife conflict in city areas. But they are quite the cats. They have a massive size variation too. I think the females can be like the males can be like 60% heavier than the females, which is gnarly.
I think they also follow Bergman's rule really well in that they are smaller closer to the equator and then get bigger as you go to higher latitudes.
Yeah. I want to say that's true for tigers too.
That makes sense.
Oh, I believe it.
The Siberians being the biggest ones. Yeah.
Yeah. Puma, I think that big cats, in the cat discussion, cougars really stand out for me because we spend so much time talking about the super cool exotic big cats of like far-flung places like the Amazon and the African savanna and jungles of India and stuff. But there's big super impressive cats here in my home country, which is very cool.
I wonder if it's something about the pattern that makes us feel like they're not as cool or exotic, they're plain. The rest of the cats have a pretty cool look, like even lions, which don't have a pattern unless they're, cubs, but they have the manes and everything. Like they're just a plain big cat.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that always stands out to me about them in regards to like here in North America, most of the big predators we have are not major issues for people. Like, we've got bears, but they don't regularly attack people. You need to be aware of them. They can be dangerous. Grizzlies can be territorial, but like black bears don't regularly come in conflict. We've got wolves, and there's never been a reported death by wolf, for a human in North America. They get, people are scared of them, but they're not actually coming for us. Gators are similar, where unless you're messing with them, they're most likely not going to mess with you. But then the puma is one of those where people warn you, and it's like, no, because they will come after you if you are in their territory, either because you're moving like a prey animal or because you're too close to their home. This is a predator that is fully willing to take you down, and they're really one of the only animals like that in North America. We don't have a lot of predators that you have to be that scared of here.
No, and I think we take their stats for granted too. Like, I mean, they have the distances that they can cover are comparable to like snow leopards. I think it's like 40 feet horizontally they can jump, like 20 feet vertically. They can get up to like 50 miles per hour, I think, at certain like sprints. Like that is nothing to mess with. That is crazy.
Yeah. We North Americans aren't accustomed to being hunted by wildlife. Like, we're fortunate compared to some other parts of the world where it's like, you do have to be on the lookout because there are animals here that will hunt you. Cougars are really our one. That's really our one, and it's easy to forget how serious an issue that can be.
I mean, thousands of years ago, North America looked like the African savanna. And same with Europe. Like you could say that Europe looked like an African savanna as well. And I think like just goes to show that especially in those two areas, we've become so separate from nature that we just don't think about it as something that can affect us. And then that exception in North America is cougars. It's like, but we still forget about them too.
Yeah. Well, speaking of cats with impressive stats, there is one more member of the puma lineage and our final, quote, big cat to talk about for the episode. Lindsay, please go off about cheetahs.
Yes, my personal favorite.
This feels like when we've reached number one, most extreme.
Yes. and in many ways, that is what these are.
I also, even though I've been talking about cats this entire episode, I also feel like I've finally reached my spot at show and tell.
Yes. Yep. But now for real, though.
Yes. Look at my rock. It's a cheetah. Cheetahs are the fastest terrestrial animal on a planet. So cool. They can get up to 70 miles per hour, and they're super skinny and slinky and feisty in their own ways, but definitely nothing like a puma. I think what makes cheetahs my favorite animal is just their range of personalities. I've worked with a lot of cheetahs, and they have a feistiness that is not to be messed with, but in a way that makes you want to laugh at them a little bit, because a lot of it is for show. Cheetahs really are built for flight rather than fight. That was their adaptation in the African savanna. Leopards went up into the trees, probably to avoid predators like lions, and cheetahs went for speed and just getting the heck out of there if they need to. You will never see a cheetah go up against a lion or a leopard. Like, they will just, they're not about it. And even humans, you walk up to a cheetah and you make yourself big enough, they will be out of there. They are no threat to you. A cheetah has never killed a person in the wild.
Wow.
Well, and they're small too. They're mountain lion sized at best, right?
Smaller than mountain, because they're so skinny. They're like a greyhound. I mean, they're like 60 to 120 pounds or something. Wow. Yeah. A leopard is a pit bull, and a cheetah is a greyhound. That's how I like to think about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And yeah, so because of their size, because they're so small, they really just go for smaller antelope, diker, springbok, dik-dik, the babies of maybe some larger antelope. But from my understanding of them, they really don't, unless absolutely necessary, they're not gonna risk anything. A fun little fact that I've never backed up before with evidence, but somebody told me once. So just take it with a grain of salt. But apparently cheetahs don't like the taste of giraffe because it's a little too spicy for them.
Oh.
Interesting. Listeners,
spicy.
If you've eaten giraffe, weigh in.
Yeah.
Weigh in on the spice level.
So I actually did try giraffe to see
Lindsay,
if it
Lindsay,
tasted.
weigh in.
I tried to see if it tasted spicy, and I tried giraffe along with a lot of other like meats. I tried like oryx, giraffe, springbok. They all kind of tasted the same, and I don't know if it's because the restaurant used the same like seasoning. And I never got to ask like, hey, did you use a little less on the giraffe? Just wondering. But yeah, so I don't know if it's maybe just something that they notice on the raw meat. I don't know. But I did hear it from a supervisor that I worked with. And so I'm not completely discounting it, but I'm never going to say it without saying I've never backed up that with evidence.
Well, and you hear about that with like animal feedings all the time, where it's like, yep, this individual doesn't like the aquarium I worked at. This one doesn't like squid, loves the fish, doesn't want the squid. So we have to like trick them into eating squid just to round out their diet. But they have their favorites, and it makes total sense that it's just for whatever reason not on their favorites list.
Yeah. And don't we know that about cats? They are quite the picky eaters. They can be. And cheetahs definitely follow that rule. So in the wild, cheetahs will carve out a bowl into the carcass, eat from the inside out. They're a lot cleaner with their kills than other cats are. So that means that the meat that they're eating never touches the ground. It never gets dirty. And so for a lot of the cheetahs in captivity, you have to, create that same situation for them. And I've given a lot of cheetahs meat in bowls in my time.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I remember hearing, I don't remember where this came up, some study of ancient diets where the study mentioned that big cats like lions will chomp into bone. They're not like eating bone the way a hyena would necessarily, but they are like scraping meat right off the bone. Whereas cheetahs tend not to do, like, cheetahs will go for the soft parts of the body, such that like if a cheetah ate a carcass, you're very unlikely to find any signs on the bone of like bites or anything, because they're really they're sticking to the most delicate soft parts.
Totally. Yeah. And if it just so happens that they can like get to the bone marrow, they like it. But yeah, they really just stick to the soft parts. You're right.
And I've heard that that's for the like part of the reason that they don't have like the robust skulls, so like they wouldn't be able to chomp into bone even if they wanted to, but also that they're one of those predators that goes for the best parts first, not only because they're soft and easy to eat, but they might get chased off that carcass.
Yep.
So they eat the high quality stuff prioritized, which also makes sense why this would lead to them being picky eaters in other cases. They need to be picky because if they don't start with the best thing, they might not get to it at all.
Absolutely. Yeah. In order to become the fastest cats, they had to lose the ability to do a lot of things like,
Yeah.
get through the bones, fight for themselves. But they also had a lot of, I guess, slightly unrelated things happen in their evolutionary history. They've gone through 2 genetic bottlenecks in the last
Yep.
120,000 years. The most recent one
Yeah.
happened at the end of the last ice age.
Mm-hmm.
And evidence suggests, like genetic evidence suggests, that there were as few as 7 individuals, because that's how genetically similar all cheetahs are. Could have been more, but that's
Whoa.
as few as there could have been, which is
Yeah.
really, really gnarly. Like, we really almost completely lost them. And so, along with being super slinky and skinny, they also have, all cheetahs to some varying degree have crooked lower incisors, a
Mm-hmm.
kink in their tail, asymmetric skulls.
Wow.
Interesting. So they've got they are an inbred population.
Yeah.
They have a bunch of those common mutations that
Yep.
tend to pop up when you don't get a lot of genetic diversity.
Yep. Super duper.
Wow.
Crazy.
Talking about cheetahs makes me think back to when we were talking about the snow leopards, in that this is, we were talking about how the big cats are all pretty cat shaped in general, but that snow leopards were an exception, where it's like, but they've got the dense fur, they've got the big paws. Cheetahs feel like another example of that, where you look at a cheetah and it's like, this is physically altered for
Yes.
the
Yes.
lifestyle that it is living in. You describe them as being sort of greyhound shaped.
Mhm.
Can you talk about their other adaptations to speed, like those
Yeah.
other physical differences that they have?
Their tails are super long. I mean,
Mhm.
probably similar. I think snow leopards are like a little bit longer than theirs relatively, but cheetahs need to use their tail to act like a rudder when they're running.
Mhm.
They also have super massive nasal cavities, similar to snow leopards, but for a different reason, in order to take in more oxygen when they're running at those high speeds.
Yeah.
They also have only semi-retractable claws. Most big cats have fully retractable claws, but cheetahs have semi, so that they use them as like traction when they're
Yeah.
running. And so, yeah, their claws are like really flat and honestly a little ugly. They're just not really pretty to look at.
Yeah.
And then those classic infamous cheetah stripes seem to act as like
Mhm.
a zinc to keep the sun out of their eyes when they're looking at prey from like a much further distance.
Oh,
Yep.
cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I've heard that they also have a really impressive lung capacity.
Yeah. Hey, you gotta be able
Yes.
to.
Yeah,
Yep.
well, it's incredible how many of these features are convergent with horses.
Yes, I was about to say like a
Like those
racehorse.
big
Mm.
noses, big lungs, that sort of streamlined body, those narrow limbs. Yeah, this is a horse cat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I guess this is a question, another sidebar, because I haven't looked into horses a lot at all. It's like on my list. Are those adaptations that seem to have happened after humans started messing with them or before? Do we
So,
know?
They're exaggerated in racehorses,
Mm-hmm.
yep.
but they are, I believe, like the lungs of horses. That I think is just a basic horse thing, is that they've
Yeah.
got these just, yeah, go ahead.
Once they moved into open environments, we see those
Mhm.
those running features start coming in.
Got it. Wow. I gotta look into horses. Horses are so cool.
They're so
Horses,
bizarre. I love them.
horses are pretty
Yeah.
cool.
But anyway, back to the cheetahs.
Yes. Cheetahs are also somewhat social in their
Yes, yeah.
behavior.
Like I mentioned before, males live in little coalitions of
Mhm.
like 2 to 3 cheetahs, and so sometimes this will be a brother that they grew up with, but not all the time. Females are totally solitary, and so when mom has her cubs at about 2 years old, they'll all split off. The females will go off on their own. The males will, if they have a brother, go off together, or they'll go and find other males. And the only time they interact after that is to mate. And then boom, gone.
It's interesting because it means that like when without cubs, the female's alone, but then when with cubs, that's the female social group, and then the males have their little coalitions. That's an interesting balance.
Yeah. And in captivity, it's pretty easy to pair males together. Females, like, so I've done a lot of work at Cheetah Conservation Fund in Namibia, and at least how they do it there, they do try to pair up the females as much as they can, just so they have, because captivity is a different living situation.
Yes.
So just so they have a buddy. But it can be a little trickier because they just have more of a feisty personality with each other.
Yeah. Isn't it that in some cases where they like have an orphan cheetah and don't have another cheetah, that they will put dogs with them?
That is true at zoos where they're around a lot of noises and people and all of that. They're like anxiety dogs.
They get a service dog.
A service dog, It's so cute. And you'll see the cheetahs kind of like laying behind the dog most of the time. Aww. It's really, really cute.
That's very cool. So the puma lineage, pumas and cheetahs, are other big cats, plus jaguarundis being little weirdos down in South and Central America. You mentioned earlier that this is a lineage that split off several million years ago. What do we know about the fossil record of these cats?
So they originated in North America and I think split off from there. Pumas went south. Am I remembering this right? They went south and then back up north again. And then the cheetahs went back to Eurasia. There was also an American cheetah, which was not the same lineage as modern cheetahs, but kind of closely related, it was more closely related to pumas, but had some convergent characteristics with modern cheetahs. But they kind of had a lifestyle more like snow leopards in some regard, because they were able to like jump around on cliffs, it seemed. They were at least found in habitats like that. And so I think they were kind of like this wastebasket cat that was doing like, it was like closely related to pumas, convergent with cheetahs, but then like lifestyle kind of like snow leopards, like just kind of all over the place. And they were alive, I think, until the end of the last ice age as well. We lost a lot of cool guys to the ice age.
Yeah, we did. This continent was covered in big cats until the end of the year, because we had our pumas. I think jaguars used to come up farther north. We had American lions. We had Muracynonyx, the American cheetah. And besides that, we had saber-toothed cats. So like this was a big cat continent. They were all over the place.
Yeah, it was a cat world, but especially a cat continent.
Yeah, well, and you have to imagine that like humans made it to North America like 15,000 years ago or something. So like they came over here and it was just like big cat central. And that must have been, it's just like,
such
listen, there were cave lions back in Europe. There were tigers back over there. We came to a new continent to find a new place, and we found the biggest cats of all time.
We were told there were no cats in America. And it is very much not true.
That the forests were paved with gold and that there were no big cats. And both of those were lies.
Hey, just goes to show, like, of course the cats became our gods, right? Like, of course they became the gods of the underworld. Like, they were everywhere. They were every single part of our culture. Like, they were just all over the place. But what a bummer that must have been.
Seriously. I also really appreciate you making the point about the American cheetah, because that one comes up very often because of the pronghorn, where people say pronghorn's one of our fastest animals alive today, but there's nothing as fast as it here in North America. And people bring up the anecdote of that's because we used to have an American cheetah, which is a fun idea, but there's not actually any evidence that that's why that was. And you making the point that they seem like they were actually living like a different big cat. There's like, we don't know for sure what this cat was doing, including whether it was hunting pronghorn. So
Yeah.
I appreciated that, because that's always been one of my pet peeves when I see that get used as and this is why the pronghorn's so fast.
Yeah.
Maybe, we don't know.
Yeah. I've actually had some confusion about that too, because people bring it up like even in like, more professional contexts. And I think I've always gotten a little confused, and I think I just maybe once wrapped my head around it, and then I forgot I wrapped my head around it, and now it's just not wrapped anymore. But there was a back and forth between modern cheetahs in North America and then going back to Eurasia and then back into Africa. Like, so I don't know if there's something significant there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd have to look into it again. It's
Yeah.
the cheetah radiations are a little confusing.
Yeah. Well, and another thing that you said earlier that stuck with me is that pumas are very fast. We think about cheetah, and obviously big cats, they're big and they're powerful and they can move really fast. But we think of cheetahs as being these unique speed demons because they can run 60, 70 miles an hour. But pumas, they're, among their closest relatives, are also really speedy cats.
Yeah.
And so it might be that this is just a fast group of cats.
The fast cat clade.
Yeah. Well, and like you were saying about cheetahs today in Africa, did pumas and American cheetahs need to be fast because they lived in ecosystems with Smilodon and Panthera atrox and dire wolves and short-faced bears? And it was like, yeah, you got to grab something fast, you got to eat it fast, and then you have to run away because there's a ton of bigger predators than you.
Absolutely.
A bunch of heavyweights.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, we have cheetahs as the fastest land animal, 70 miles per hour. That is insane. 35 miles per hour is also still really insane.
Yep.
I actually had this realization today because I'm going back to Kenya in September, and I'm really into cycling, and my friend was telling me about these little cycling tours that we can do. And, rangers will kind of like follow the bikes to make sure that we're okay. And so in my head, I was like, well, I'm on a bicycle, it's not like I'm running. And so I can like bike really fast. Then I was like, wait, I don't bike 35 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So actually 35 miles per hour is really fast for a cat, like you kind of forget because a lot of animals can reach that speed, but that is gnarly. Like we are nowhere near that, even on a bicycle.
That comparison drove it home for me in a way that it's never been driven home for me before.
Yes.
The idea that like, yeah, this is a predator that I couldn't outrun on a bike.
Yep. You need something gas powered.
Yeah. And like you need something good, like a golf cart's not going to do it. You need something with an engine.
Seriously. You need to be able to go 0 to 60 like quick.
Yeah. Well, and I think that really does, cheetahs, I think it's easy to overlook how impressive they are because you don't have that comparison. And like a mountain lion could catch you on a bike, right? Like this is a fast animal. I want to say Usain Bolt's record is like 24 miles an hour or something. Like that's like the fastest human record is like 10 mph short of what these animals are doing. So to understand that a cheetah could catch a mountain lion on a bike.
Yeah.
The cheetahs are unbelievably fast animals.
Yeah.
Well, they're one of those examples, and not that they're actually over-engineered, because the animals they're chasing are also extremely fast and athletic. Like antelope are no shirks when it comes to speed, but that they are so specialized and optimized that they're really pushing the limits of it usually when we see animals, we always say that they are going to adapt for good enough, and that usually means that yes, there is faster or there is stronger or there is tougher or whatever the thing is, but you don't need it. This is one of those examples that's really getting close to that point of it feels like you have already entered the realm of diminishing returns
Yep.
because you are so fast and so specialized that like surely a bunch of these extreme adaptations only added a couple miles per hour, like
Yep.
because you're just pushing the limit.
Right. And then, like I said, what I was saying before, like, and then you're at a point where there really is no turning back. There is no, you can't become slightly more generalist from here. And
Yeah.
that's why cheetahs are so sensitive. Like, they are so at risk of extinction because of these specializations. Like, a lot of their habitats in sub-Saharan Africa are becoming overrun by thorn bush, and then they don't have the open savanna that they need to chase after their kills. And then they can't really be ambush hunters. Like, they need that base and that distance. So unfortunately, they face a lot of problems. Another big one is because they're such flight animals rather than fight, they tend to avoid the times that other predators are hunting at. And so they're kind of hunting more at the times that farmers are waking up to notice that their livestock were killed overnight, and then a cheetah's walking around, and even though the cheetah didn't do it, it gets blamed for it. And so one of the things that some places are doing is introducing livestock guarding dogs, because they're taking advantage of that flight over fight response that they have. Anything that's even a little bit bigger than a cheetah's going to run away from. And so you introduce an Anatolian shepherd into the mix that's protecting the livestock, those livestock are going to be good, and probably good against leopards as well. Maybe lions, but I'm not going to say that at all. But, might scare them one or two times, but yeah.
Well, I think that it's really telling that the most famously endangered of the modern big cats are cheetahs and snow leopards, who are extraordinarily specialized cats.
Yes.
And then to a perhaps similar degree, tigers, who are the most specialized giant cat. Like, you really do, you've evolved yourself into a corner that worked really, really well until these particular changes started happening in the environment. And then those, pumas are in trouble, but on the whole, pumas are doing pretty darn good compared to a lot of their fellow large cats.
Absolutely, yeah. Pumas are relatively adaptable. The fact that there's pumas living in the Santa Monica Mountains in LA is crazy.
Yes. It's the big cats really do give a good range of examples of what we talk about whenever we talk about extinction events, that specialization is often a death sentence. And like, because if you described a cheetah to someone, it would sound like when you describe like a superhero of like the Flash, to where it's like, well, what can't the Flash do? The Flash can move faster than anyone. He can punch hard with his infinite mass punch, and he's super durable. Like, what can't the Flash do? But the reality is, to move at that speed, it's a high energy, so you need steady supply of prey. You are fragile, and you need a very specific environment to hunt in. They're like the race cars of cats. Like
totally.
Formula One car is so impressive until you put it in a neighborhood street and it has to deal with speed bumps and gravel roads, and it doesn't have rear view mirrors and stuff. Like, it only functions in this one specific way. Once that's changed, they really can't do much.
Absolutely. Yeah. Those specialized cats, they're like the Ferraris of the cat world.
Yeah.
Everybody,
the Jaguars,
they're really nice to look at. They're really sweet. They go super fast. They are a status symbol and everything. But
if you put the wrong gas in them,
there's nothing like a forerunner, a nice generalist forerunner.
The thing is that Ferraris will only go for the softest parts of a carcass. And then when the SUVs come by, they have to drive away because they just can't stand up to it.
That is the well-known problem with Ferraris.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that this is the real down. Like, if they'll go to the gas station, but they have to go at the times where none of the other cars are going to the gas station, because they'll just get shoved off of the pumps.
Well, and it's why we don't see groups like cheetahs diversify. Like, when an animal becomes a cheetah, they don't then start producing dozens of species because you are not versatile anymore. You are a scalpel.
Yeah,
It's the
you're the end of
things
the
like,
line.
yeah, exactly. It's the more
Yeah.
generalist cats that we see spread out and become new cats.
I think big cats is such a fun group to discuss because they are such a fascinating batch of case studies for evolution and for evolutionary
Hmm.
processes, and just understanding how slight variations can lead to these specializations, and how the different lifestyles can affect where you can survive and how you can survive. There are really cool, I feel like you could teach a whole class about evolution just with big cats, just by
Absolutely.
comparing and
Totally.
contrasting. They're a really cool group for that.
Yeah.
Lindsay, besides knowing stuff about big cats and going through all of these wonderful cat fact overviews with us, you have also done a bunch of work with big cats, with wildlife conservation, and I want to absolutely make sure to give you time to talk about that.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
please, what do you do with cats?
Yeah. So cats are the reason why I got into zoology in the first place. And that was something that I wanted to bring up earlier, and I don't remember when, but I do think that, I've become really obsessed with the weird animals because I learned about them in college. But
Mhm.
what got me there was being so obsessed with lions and cheetahs that I just wanted to do a zoology degree so I could work with them forever.
Yes.
And so when I was 18, I volunteered at a big cat sanctuary in South Africa and worked with lions for the first time. And that was really incredible. But the biggest turning point for me was working at Cheetah Conservation Fund as an internship in college. They're in Namibia. That's why they became my favorite animal. They really just exploded my passion for the natural world because it was this kind of, I went there for the cheetahs, but then working with the cheetahs meant seeing oryx and other antelope that I had never heard of for the first time. All
Mhm.
these little snakes I had never heard of that honestly freaked me out quite a bit. Hey, worrying about black mambas every day, not great. Not great for the nervous system, but still
No.
a very cool life experience to have. And seeing all of these, learning about blister beetles and all of these insects that I'd never heard of before. Like, it really just, cheetahs were kind of the gateway for me becoming obsessed with every part of the ecosystem. So I think they're just like a really cool symbol of that for me. But yeah, my time working with them was just, I have this one cheetah named Koya. He's tattooed on me. And I named my house cat after him and my other house
Aw.
cat after his brother, who unfortunately passed away a couple years ago because he got bit by a
Mm.
snake, which is why you
Yep.
are afraid of snakes.
Yeah, that'll happen. Happy Snake Month, everybody. Watch out.
Oh man, not the anti-snake. I have a pet snake. I love snakes.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
This is not anti-snake.
there is nothing anti-snake about pointing out that you gotta watch out for snakes.
Yep.
That is a
Very
true that is just a true thing about them.
Very true. It's just objective fact. But yeah, cheetahs, they have the most incredible personalities that I've ever worked with because of their vocalizations. I think they can just express such a wide range of emotions. They meow, they chirp, they hiss, they spit. The amount of times I've been spit at by a cheetah is just incredible. And pumas are very similar. And so after I had my internship in Namibia, I graduated during COVID in 2020. And so at first I couldn't get any jobs with big cats, and that's how I got into content creation. It's because I had nothing else to do
Yep.
Mhm.
except just nerd out about all the stuff I learned in college. And a couple months into doing that, I got an internship at a big cat sanctuary in Minnesota, which is quite the strange place for a big cat sanctuary when you're dealing with lions and tigers and you're in a place
Yeah.
that gets down to negative 36 degrees. So it was interesting, working with big cats in that setting, because most of the work that you're doing on a daily basis is making sure everything is maintained enough so that the cats won't die overnight. Not ideal,
Yeah.
but I was able to work with tigers for the first time. The Siberian tigers I mentioned earlier that were like 650 pounds. One of my favorite tigers, Tarek, he was like part Siberian tiger, and he was massive. And I had this one experience. The keepers there thought I must have looked like someone from the place he was rescued from, because he would just look at me with this intensity that was like gnarly. And there was one time so the way the sanctuary was set up, because again, it's in Minnesota, all of the outdoor yards for the cats were connected with these indoor heated rooms that we would feed them in, because it's just easier to clean up. And so while cleaning up those rooms, once we brought the cats back in, Tarek just had his eyes on me. And I was like looking at him for a little bit. And then I turned around to leave and I hear boom, like huge boom against the fence. And I turned back around and he's like on his hind legs, like against the fence. And he must have been like 8, 9, 10 feet up. I was just looking up at him like that. It was the craziest feeling, like feeling that, was that a prey drive thing that you just did? Like, what was that, And also the intensity that he was still looking at me. Like, tigers are a really, really special animal. Unfortunately, so many of them are in captivity here because they're weirdly easy to breed in captivity.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have them as pets, especially in Texas. There's more cats, there's more tigers in people's backyards in Texas than there are in the wild, which is horrific. Yeah. And so a lot of these sanctuaries, these big cat sanctuaries in the US exist to rescue tigers from backyard situations.
Yeah.
And so most of the cats I worked with there were tigers. There were some lions that most of them were being rescued from South America, which I thought was strange, like weird roadside zoos in South America.
Yeah.
But it was pretty cool to see them like hopping around in the snow, even though they clearly didn't like it. And most of the time, after blizzards, was just shoveling snow out of their enclosure so they didn't have to walk through it because they hated it. But those little moments where they would tolerate it were pretty cool.
So it sounds like, because we talked about, I think, 7 species of modern day big/large cats. It sounds like you have personally worked with most of these.
Yeah, the only two, no, sorry, I haven't worked with clouded leopards, snow leopards, or jaguars.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everything else, yes. Leopards were super cool. I only worked with 2. One of them had been raised as somebody's pet. Actually, both of them had. And it created 2 very different personality outcomes. One of them, Shadow, would just come and rub up against the fence like wanted to be pet, and you were just like, oh, I want to so bad, but I don't trust you. She was such a cute little thing. She was a black leopard. Both of them were. Shazam wanted nothing to do with you, would look at you with hatred in his soul. And
I've been to houses with house cats with both of those personalities.
Yep. Yeah, you never know what you're going to get, but it does make you wonder what living situation they came from, because that happened with the tigers too. There were some tigers like Daisy who would play with you at the fence, and she was just such this playful, like she felt like a kitten, just a full-grown tiger. And then there was another tiger, and Sabrina, who had been rescued from a cub petting facility, which are unfortunately, luckily now are, diminishing in the US, but they still exist like underground and everything.
Yep.
But Sabrina had this intensity that I'd never seen with a cat, and I still haven't seen that before. She would just roar at you if you even made the slightest movement too fast around her. And so you had to move like, I wish I could, I'm just going to show you guys, like you would have to, if you're feeding her, it would have to be like pulling away at this speed, and anything faster than that, she would just slap the fence and roar. It was horrifying. There was one time that my fast movement unfortunately just led to like a huge outburst. It wasn't something that she could get over, and so she kept hitting the fence, she kept roaring, and it finally hit me in that moment that it wasn't something that I needed to be afraid of. It was her expressing genuine fear. Like she was the scared one, because she had been traumatized in some way that me just moving slightly so fast just made her so scared. And it was an emotional experience for me, because
Yeah.
you grow up, especially with tigers and lions and these bigger cats, you grow up thinking they are unstoppable. They are this force that you have no power over. They have all the power over you. But then in those situations, you realize they are just as vulnerable and just as sensitive as any other animal. They have the ability to be seriously traumatized, seriously impacted by our behaviors, our little human behaviors. We can never outrun them, like we think that that we're powerless and we can't do anything to impact them that heavily, but we can. And big cats, they are incredible forces of nature, but they also deserve the sensitivity that we give to anything else.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, very well said. The way you describe them makes me think of videos that I've seen of like dogs and cats in shelters, where it's like, yeah, we found this dog on the street and we took it in, and now we're having to like teach it to be okay around people and to be okay with feeding. It's like that, but with a quarter ton of predator.
Yes.
Exactly.
Which I imagine comes with a whole host of different challenges.
Absolutely. That's a really good way to put it, because it does feel that intense. A really aggressive dog is really scary.
Yeah.
And a really aggressive tiger is pretty scary.
Even more so.
Yeah.
So, did you get, obviously you're doing rehabilitation and conservation efforts and such, and a lot of that is feeding and cleaning places and caring for them. It's not like cuddling with wild animals like some irresponsible places on the internet will make you think. Did you ever get to have like close interactions with any of these cats?
So the first ever volunteer opportunity I had was a place that they had lion cubs, and we were able to go in with them. It's not something that I would ever do now, and I
Right.
definitely don't advocate for. I advocate for the complete opposite.
Yes.
But I was 18. I loved lions, and I was just entering the space, and so I didn't know what was right and what was wrong. And this place, I feel a gray area about it, because they weren't a cub petting facility. These, from my understanding, were rescued. And it just so happened that there were cubs there. There were also some lions that we weren't able to go in with because they were too old. But they did allow us to go in with them. And of course, I took a ton of pictures. I was 18. I was still in high school. Like, I went back home. I showed all my friends. I felt so cool. And it pushed me into like, I was like, I want to be the next Kevin Richardson, this guy who like cuddles with lions in South Africa. And in my first year of zoology, I just imagined like, oh, I'm going to be the next Kevin Richardson, like that's all I had in my head. And then when I went to Cheetah Conservation Fund, I was kind of confused. Like, why aren't the supervisors going in with them? Like, they clearly want affection. Like, they're coming up, they're rubbing against the fence, they're rubbing against each other. They look really fine. And I kind of just wanted to observe. I didn't want to like just outright be like, what's going on here, But I finally worked up the courage to ask my supervisor, like, why don't you guys go in with them? And she just put it really simply. She was like, it would only benefit us. It has no benefit to them. That would only feed our own desires and everything. And that's not really what we're here for. And that switched everything for me. And I think learning that difference in that way was really important for my own like evolution of what I think is right and what's wrong. I think if early on somebody had told me, how could you do that? You must hate animals. Like, that's a horrible thing to do. Do you know what they do in these, like, I probably would have shut down, like, especially as a young kid, and I would have been like, I love these animals. That person must be wrong.
Yes.
And so I think that having that experience has definitely helped me shape how I have these conversations in my own content. I really try to make sure I'm not shaming anyone, because you never know where you're meeting somebody. Maybe they are susceptible to or willing to hear a new opinion, or willing to accept and have their own journey of realizing that their previous opinion was wrong. And they just need something that ushers them to have that own opinion themselves rather than somebody forcing it on them.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a really powerful story, because I think it's really valuable to demonstrate that, like, because I fully sympathize with the experience of having had experiences and done things both in a scientific context and not, that when I was a teenager, I was really excited that I did it. And it was like something that I would brag about and like tell stories, or even like in college, right? Even in my early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually reached a point where I was like, okay, that actually wasn't good. And I shouldn't tell that story because
Yeah.
that was irresponsible, or that was just cringe worthy, a
Yeah.
way to go about it. But that's part of learning. That is absolutely
That's
part
life.
of coming to those understandings. And it isn't, that's not the end of it, right?
Yeah.
There's still space to move and there's room to grow.
Yeah. For a long time, I never told that story. I never even talked about that
Yeah.
facility that I volunteered
Mhm.
at, because I was so ashamed of it. And I think that's something too, is like, I want to believe that most people, especially when dealing with animals, have good intentions and that
Mm-hmm.
they were just led the wrong way, especially with how social media,
Mhm.
impacts it these days.
Yeah.
But I want to believe that people will have the capacity to react the same way that I did. And that means that there will already be their own level of shame. Like nobody else needs to shame them for it because they'll be ashamed
Yeah.
enough for themselves. But I started telling that story just because I did feel like it was important to have whoever wants to hear it like be able to see how far I've come from that
Yeah.
perspective, and that anybody's capable of having that too. And I think it also helps to, when I'm having conversations with people who just went to a tiger petting facility, which, hey, at the end of the day, I don't even know how you could look at that and be like, that seems fine.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Yeah.
like in chains and
Mhm.
everything. Like, but
Yes.
I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. I'll tell you the story about, the opinion I had when I was 18 and how it changed over time. And hopefully you can connect to that in a way.
Mhm.
But I do think that most people are capable of having that change in perspective, and I hope they do. I think most people want the best for animals, especially, maybe that's not true for like the weird little guys, and
Yeah.
I wish that it would be,
Yeah.
but for cats, like they are objectively loved, or
Yes.
maybe that's not the right word, but yeah,
We have a
yeah,
Yeah.
soft spot for them.
we do, yeah,
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and I appreciate that kind of approach to broaching this topic and introducing it to people because, as you also said, it's a gray area oftentimes. Like,
mm-hmm.
you know, my experience at aquarium, often we would talk about AZA because
Yeah.
that was one of the ways to assuage guests that were a little bit uncomfortable with the idea of zoos and aquariums, to say, well,
Yep.
we actually have all these rules and regulations we follow whose only purpose is to care for the animal. So we are bound by a very long list of tasks we have to meet this accreditation. And that would often then bring up the idea or topic of, oh, so are AZA, non-AZA places bad? Well, not always. There's a whole bunch that are fine and that are
Yep.
doing just as good as an AZA, but they can't quite afford the accreditation costs. They can't afford their enclosures are a little too small, not due to neglect, but due to just property. They
Yep.
just can't afford to get more land. There are plenty of non-official places that are doing good work, and there are even some who aren't doing it the official way, but aren't doing harm to the animals.
Yep.
Like you said with that first place you were at, it's not that they were abusing these animals. They weren't evil.
Yep.
They were just doing it in a way that generally isn't the way we would ideally suggest.
Yeah, like sets a bad example.
Yeah, and could lead to bad behavior. That's
Yep.
often the case. It's not that touching a big cat is going to make its mother reject it, like we were told with baby birds and stuff. Like,
Right.
we're not toxic when we touch them and they're going to die. But encouraging people to touch wild animals has high probability of leading to bad outcomes. So it is this very gray area of, if you've had an experience like that, that doesn't mean you were abusing that animal. It doesn't mean that you were being immoral. It doesn't mean that the people who let you do it were being greedy corporate shysters.
Yep.
But we don't want to encourage. It comes up with us with fossil collection of is buying and selling fossils good or bad? There's a lot to talk about.
Yeah,
Generally, we don't want to
talk about.
Yeah, we don't want to encourage it per se. But if you've bought a fossil, you're not a bad person. You just it's layered, and it makes this sort of conversation equally complex. Of it's not good or bad. It's just there is a better practice that generally will lead to better outcomes.
Yeah. And then the people finding the fossils and cleaning them up and everything, they're using so much of their time and their money and their resources, and they deserve to be compensated for that.
Yeah.
But it's also really hard with, you know, scientific discovery and, you know, so many unethical practices there and everything. There's so many gray area topics that I really want to get more into and cover in depth on my YouTube channel. But I think it just requires 10 different people with varying perspectives who are all like experts, and, you know, being able to really just like lay out everything to allow somebody to come to their own conclusion with all of the information. But that's a big next step for me, is like I want to cover trophy hunting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And conservation issues like zoos. Fossil hunting would probably be one of them. Like there's a lot of places that people just need to have all the information to make up their own opinion, because there's not necessarily a right or wrong opinion.
Yeah. And if you cover it too briefly, it's hard not to say, for it not to end up sounding like here's the right way to do it, every other way is the wrong way.
Yep.
Because like you said, for a lot of people that's just going to shut them down, especially if they have personally had an experience, or like, you know, an example of one of those people who has like a relationship with a wild animal. Like I can't remember his name, but the guy that was best friends with a crocodile and would swim with the croc and stuff, where they're like, but you can't tell me that's bad. I will not believe that that's bad. Look at it. It's beautiful. And so it's very hard to sum up this topic without sounding like you're demonizing potentially good people.
Totally.
Yeah. I am really glad that we got to do this episode during Snake Month, because Croc and Snake Month we have turned into a celebration of conservation, and I think that this has been a really good conversation to have as part in that spirit, as part of this celebration of wildlife that we do. Well, and as it happens, before we completely leave this thread behind, there is one more thing to do in this episode before we wrap things up, and that is to answer a patron question. One of the benefits that our patrons can receive in return for their support is the ability to submit questions for us to answer here on the podcast. And when we have guests on, we invite the guests sometimes to answer the questions with us. And we've got that was maybe the best segue into a patron question we've ever had. Danielle asks, as a hunter, I often find myself wondering what effect it has on the animals as a whole. Since most hunters are after the biggest and best, does that harm the population long term? Lindsay, this is an area that you have some experience and thoughts on. What would you say to Danielle?
What a perfect little segue conversation right into another gray area topic. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of conservation benefits to hunting, especially with overpopulation, especially with invasive species into an area. I mean, it is an absolute necessity in a lot of different, you know, populations. Trophy hunting, which is probably a little bit different, maybe not. I'll place it as a subcategory and go into it a little bit. If it's done right, in many ways, yes, you might think that you're taking out the biggest, the most beautiful individual in a population, but the ethical way to do it and the way that is supposed to be standard is like you're taking out species or individuals that aren't going to be reproducing anymore. And so it makes sense to, like, you know, with lions and trophy hunting with lions, if there's a male in a pride that is still the dominant male, but he's not able to reproduce anymore, it makes sense to remove him from the pride so that a younger male can step in and continue repopulating.
Mm-hmm.
I think the problem with hunting in those aspects is that's how it's supposed to go in practice or in theory, but it doesn't go that way in practice, especially when you're dealing with places that are struggling financially, struggling
Mm-hmm.
economically, and the only way that they're bringing money in is through these huge trophy hunting operations or just hunting operations in general, because then the conservation element of it is removed from their priority, and rightfully so. Like, it makes sense. It's
Yeah.
not a priority for them to protect the species they're living 300 meters from, when they can't even put food on the table.
Yep.
I have personally met somebody in Namibia who only got an education because a school was built in her village using trophy hunting money. So
Yeah.
it's like, it's so complex. And, a lot of the times, like I was saying, like, they might say that the male isn't able to reproduce anymore, but maybe that's not true. And they're just doing a
Mm-hmm.
shortcut so the client can be happy with the kill or whatever. Like, it's just so complicated. And in theory, hunting is great for conservation, but people don't always follow the guidelines that are, put in place.
Yeah. Well, and to do it the correct way takes so much more effort
Yeah.
and knowledgeability. Like, for the example with the lion, or I've heard similar things with rhinos, where it's like there's this big male or aggressive male that is
Mm-hmm.
injuring other rhinos. So
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to protect the species. This one is actually making that harder. Let's let a dentist take him out. But like, even when it comes to like fishing or crabbing or collecting oysters, there are rules and regulations to try to protect the population, but it means measuring the animal to make sure you're only taking the right size category, avoiding, like lobsters, females with eggs, to make sure you're not reducing their ability to provide new lobsters. And that takes you knowing what's correct, knowing how to determine that, and then taking the extra steps to determine that. That's effort, and not everyone is going to do that, and some people aren't going to have the time, knowledge, or energy to do
Mm-hmm.
that I need to eat now, I'm eating the first one I catch. That's that.
Yep.
And following those regulations is only good if the regulations are good.
Yes.
And there's a lot of different things that influence what regulations get set up and why they get set up and where and when and all that. If you're in a country, completely irrelevant to, any country that we might be in, but if you're in a country where legislatively isn't prioritizing environmental protection or wildlife conservation, then following the regulations might still not be good, because the regulations might not be doing a very good job. So it really is, it's a very complicated subject.
Well, and their question about taking out the biggest and best did make me think of the example of elephants, where we have seen an increase in tuskless individuals, because it does seem that the overhunting of large tusked elephants is selecting against having large tusks. So like, like if you only go for the deer with the biggest antlers, that will eventually have an effect on the gene pool, and big antlers that is now not a beneficial thing to have if that makes you such a rich target for hunters.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and also big antlers and tusks are how you attract mates.
Yes.
So even if you're not selecting, you could just be disrupting the reproductive process of these animals. So there's all there, and it's going to be different for every population and every species. So this is why it's hard. This is why it's been difficult to. If it was easy, Danielle wouldn't have had to ask this question.
Yeah. Well,
it's a tough topic.
Why so often the main issue is commercial hunting.
Yeah.
If it's just individuals hunting for their own needs, it's very hard for you to do enough to do damage. When it becomes corporatized, when it becomes commercial, when it becomes a profit machine, that's when you get it. Now the numbers jump from hundreds to thousands, and that's when a species really starts getting hit.
Yeah. And going back to the legal element of it, like, these animals don't exist within country borders or state
Yep.
borders. And so varying laws, it can be really effective in California, but then in, I don't know, Texas, it's just a completely different story. And so
Yes,
it's just
exactly.
so complicated.
Yes. So I guess, Danielle, best practice is to learn a lot. Try to be
Yep.
as knowledgeable and as responsible as you can be as a hunter. Being a hunter is not inherently a bad thing, but there are ways to do it responsibly.
Yeah.
And don't necessarily base it off of where you live. Maybe look into what other states are suggesting
Yeah.
or what other countries are suggesting, and go with the most conservative in terms of, with the most benefit to the animal and the population
Yes.
as you can.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Thank you, Danielle, for that question. Thank you, Lindsay, for assisting us in answering it. Listeners, this has been a ton of fun. This has been, I think, when I invited Lindsay, a main core part of the pitch for this episode was come geek out about big cats with us. And that, I think, we have successfully accomplished that mission over the course of this episode. Listeners, if you want more, check out the blog post for this episode, link in the episode description. Over to our website, we'll have pictures of all of our big cats. Ooh, Lindsay, if you have fun pictures that you could share for the blog post, maybe we can throw some of those in there. We'll talk about that afterwards. We'll put some links for more information. We can also link to some of these conservation organizations that I think would be really fun for people to know about. Thank you to everybody who requested this topic. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you to all of our patrons who support the podcast, especially to our new patrons, and especially to our top tier patrons, Danielle Loves Bugs, Jeff Ellington, and Sarah May. And the biggest of thanks to Lindsay. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. We had a great time.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun. Hey, if you want to geek out about big cats again, let me know.
Absolutely. Please let the people know where they can find you elsewhere on the internet.
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube. That's my main platform at Lindsay Nikole. Lindsay is with an A and Nikole is with a K.
Yes, we'll put it in the episode description.
Sweet. You can find me on TikTok, same Lindsay Nikole, Instagram, Lindsay_Nikole. I also have a book called Epic Earth. I went through how life evolved. You can find that in many bookstores, also online. And yeah.
Incredible. Listeners, do be aware that a lot of Lindsay's content is not quite as family friendly as our podcast tends to be. And we're so proud of you for making it the whole episode without swearing.
Oh, thank you very much.
Lindsay, you were nervous about it when we sat down and was like, oh, also we don't swear on the podcast. Your face was like, uh-oh. Yeah. We're gonna see how that goes. But it went very well.
It's always fun when we have to make that announcement to a guest and seeing their reaction. Because sometimes they're like, yeah, sure. And then others are like, oh, all right, noted.
Yeah. I had to seriously note that. I hope none of them slipped. I don't even know. I don't know if you caught it.
They did not. No, okay, sweet. We'd let you know. Awesome. No, you did great. Lindsay, your content is very irreverent in a way that I think that is extremely effective and extremely engaging and is just very different from the vibe of our podcast. So listeners, I think you absolutely should go check out Lindsay's YouTube channel. I've watched a bunch of Lindsay's videos and I love them. I've worked on some of those videos.
Yes.
And so I have a little bit of a stake in this.
Yes.
But like, if you're listening to this with your 5-year-old, maybe, watch a video on your own first.
Yeah. Make sure you're okay with the swearing in it. Yeah. Yeah. I think just a real quick note about that. I was hoping to capture an audience that was the same age as when I started getting really passionate about animals that I didn't know about, kind of like later high school, college age. And so that's the reason for that. That's the only reason why, it might not be suitable for kids. It's just a little bit of swearing, nothing else, nothing crazy.
Yes, this is true.
Yes.
I didn't. I hope I didn't give the wrong impression. It's not.
It's just filthy.
It's just.
It's a strange way of getting people into biology.
Right?
No.
There's a lot of really successful content creators out there who are making biology who do not kid friendly, but in totally different ways.
Yes.
Well,
Totally.
that's part of the reason I appreciate it, is because it is honest. Like, we talk about our format, we try to make feel like you're, part of the discussion that we had back in grad school, which is mostly accurate, except that we don't curse, which is not accurate to the conversations we had back in grad school. Like, if you hang out with biologists, it would be more like that, and it would have more of that. So I appreciate that there are that people like you are out there making just very open and honest discussions.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, I want it to feel like we're having drinks at the local pub.
Exactly.
Talking about this. Yeah.
Listeners, don't forget, this is the last episode in July, which means that when you're listening to this, Snake Month is not yet over, so you can still participate on the Discord. You can still join the Snakes and Crocs tier on Patreon. We will be making our own wildlife conservation donations very shortly after this month is over, and we'll announce them soon. Go check out Leave It to Us. Go check out Bricks with Basque. We release episodes every fortnight. There'll be a whole other episode coming up soon in a whole other fortnight. And if you have already listened to all of our other episodes and you can't wait, go check out Lindsay's channel and watch a bunch of cool stuff over there.
Hell yeah. Thank you guys.
Absolutely. Lindsay, this was so much fun.
This was really fun.
The background here is that Lindsay and I have worked together a little bit, and like we've chatted a little, and I was like, cool. This person, you're invited on the podcast. Like, come on the podcast, and let's geek out together, and then like signal boost each other, and it'll be great. Everybody wins.
Yeah, it was like we would have professional meetings that would just turn into us just going off on tangents for like an hour. It was so fun.
And that's how you get invited on Common Descent, is you just have sciencey tangents. All right, let's get out of here. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. And one last time, Lindsay, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Common Descent podcast. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and check our WordPress blog for pictures and links after each episode. Huge thanks to our patrons whose support helps keep this podcast running and who get access to bonus goodies on Patreon. The song you're hearing is called On the Origin of Species by Protodome, which we found at ocremix.org. Thanks again for listening. We hope you'll join us next time.